We are in the Town Council Chambers at 30 Main Street, Freeport, Maine. This is Town Council meeting 19-25. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to our roll call. Councillor Egan.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here.
Councillor Pilch.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Pillsbury will be here shortly. Councillor Benoit is here and present. Our third order of business is to waive reading and accept as printed the August 5th, 2025 and August 18th, 2025 meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to our announcements. So in Freeport, fire danger remains high. It's very high across Maine. Dry conditions and heat have sparked a surge in wildfires, 32 fires in just the past few days. The Maine Forest Service has suspended all burn permits, and many towns have issued full burn bans, so please, no outdoor burning. Please keep flames on the grill, not in the woods. If you see smoke, don't assume it's not a cookout. It could be a wildfire. Call it in. Let's stay alert and keep Freeport safe. School is back in session. Buses are rolling, kids are walking, and sidewalks are full. Expect slower commutes in the morning and the afternoon, so plan ahead, stay alert, and help make the daily journey a safe one. Our resident district meetings are coming this September. It's your chance to connect with your town councilors, ask questions, share ideas, and hear what's happening in your neighborhood. Check freeportmaine.com for dates and details. Thinking about running for office? Nomination papers are due by September 10th. Open seats include Town Council, the RSU 5 Board, Water District, and Sewer District. Visit freeportmaine.com to learn more and take the first step towards serving your community. Meet the candidates on October 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Freeport Community Library, hosted by the Library and RSU 5 Community Services. This forum is your chance to hear from those running for Town Council, RSU 5, Water District, and Sewer District. Get informed and get ready to vote on November 4th. There's a lot happening in town government, and we want you in the loop. You can head to freeportmaine.com, click subscribe for news, and get updates straight to your inbox. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky to see what's new, what's next, and how you can help shape Freeport's future. Stay informed. Local government begins with you. Well done, Sophie. Any other announcements from the council? Councillor Brown.
I have some important news for pizza lovers. While we have a great many places in town to buy pizza, one establishment stands out. Recently, Cheapism, a consumer-focused website that helps readers find affordable yet high-quality products and services, answered this question: where in Maine can one buy a really good pizza? The question was answered in a recent press release from Maine radio station WBZN 107.4. Quoting, when it came down to picking the best pizza in each state in America, one here in the Pine Tree State towered above the rest. DeRocher's, located at 120 Main Street in Freeport, has been serving up delicious pies since 1904. They started out as a grocery store founded by Augustus DeRocher, who saved money from his railroad job to open a store, and is still family run by fifth generation Philip Wagner. I don't know why I said that. Ever since we moved to Freeport in 1969, DeRocher's has been one of our go-to places for pizzas, sandwiches, ice cream, more. I remember Phil's grandmother Alice and, of course, his father Richard. As the hands-on guy, I had to refresh my taste buds today with a pizza. It was great. No surprise. And I learned that the sixth generation is actually working there also in Alex. So it's what I love about small family businesses. So congratulations to Phil and the crew at DeRocher's.
Any other announcements? Councillor Egan.
Just want to quickly thank our Conservation Commission and all the volunteers that help with that group. The Florida Lake Trails, of which I'm a frequent walker, are really coming along, and that area has been subject to some climate adaptation challenges, let's say, and it's looking really good, and I'm hoping that next year we're going to be able to get an accessible path out to the benches at the pond so that many more people in Freeport can have access to that great spot. So thanks to the Conservation Commission for doing all the work on the trails.
I was there the other day. It looks wonderful. All right, anything else from the council? We will move on to our information exchange. We will start with our councilors, then move into our committee reports. Any information to exchange up here? Great. I do want to just call out that we have been getting some feedback on our proposed three-way stop pilot. There's some tentative feelings about it, I think. I do want to remind folks it's a pilot, so hopefully it goes very well, and if it doesn't, it's not forever, so.
We've all been struggling at times with the bridge developments, the construction and so forth, and I've had a number of close calls at exit 20, so it was time for a chat with the chief of police, Nate Goodman, and through his connections and so forth, we've made some adjustments to prevent one thing that I did and one thing that I noticed two other times, which was when you go west on the Desert of Maine Road, there's a stoplight. And you're used to going either through the stoplight, turning left or turning right. And if you'll notice, turning right places you on the southbound exit promptly. And except for the signs that say wrong way, I went the wrong way, quickly corrected. Two other people, one time I simply pulled over, honked my horn, and blinked my lights to prevent them from going further. But you could imagine what happens with a little addition of alcohol or something else. So it's things like that that the chief is working closely with DOT and so forth. There are other issues, and you know, you're all the eyes and ears for the town, so it's not bad to talk to your counselors when you see things, or go to the chief or so forth. So anyway.
Great. Councilor.
I just want to add to what you brought up about the stop sign. I imagine most people in this room are aware of it, but just in case you're not, or for the folks watching, the idea is to add 2 stop signs on Main Street at the top of Bow Street. So what's now a single stop sign at the top of Bow Street would temporarily be an all-way stop, which at that intersection means 3 stop signs. So everyone going through would stop and then continue on the way. It's a trial, as our chair mentioned, for some number of weeks in the fall. We'll probably trial it again in the spring. And the idea is this is in anticipation of redesigning Main Street in the future, possibly with wider sidewalks, maybe parallel parking, things like that. So we're trying it out to see how it works. And if you have thoughts, we'd love to hear them.
Great. Anything else?
The chair and I hosted our monthly coffee with council leadership this morning. It was the first Tuesday instead of the first Monday, but we did have a couple of folks come and chat with us about a number of issues, including the ongoing conversation about the silver bullets, which council has referred to the Sustainability Advisory Committee, which I believe is meeting tomorrow. Is that correct? That's what's on the calendar. And I just wanted to confirm that.
You're going to get me in trouble because I don't have a mic. And I believe they're going to meet later this month.
Okay, so I would just remind people to check the calendar, but we probably should update that so that we have that correct date on the calendar soon. Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll move on to our committee updates. First up, we have the Eco Maine presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to recognize a resident in the town, and thank you for the town manager in helping set this up. So much appreciated. For the last 20 years, Rod Regier has served on the EcoMaine board. I came to EcoMaine about 20 years ago, too. I as the general manager and Rod as a volunteer representing the town of Freeport. And I just wanted to make sure he stepped down this year, and I wanted to make sure that Rod went out being recognized for all that he has done for our organization. He has worked tirelessly. I'm a paid individual. Again, Rod was a volunteer, but he always did his homework. Every single resolution, every single report, every single analysis he read through. He was always prepared for every single meeting. And really, when it comes to the call of duty, when it comes to care and loyalty in representing the town as well as the organization, Rod just did an outstanding job. For those of you who may not be familiar with EcoMaine, we're a quasi-municipal solid waste management organization that serves our member communities, of which the town of Freeport is an owner community. And wanted to recognize his work and his foresight and really putting us in a position to succeed over the last 20 years. So Rod, if you could join me at the podium, we'd like to present you with this plaque. It's from the EcoMaine Board of Directors. And what it says is, thank you for your commitment and dedication to EcoMaine. Your work has positioned the organization for much success. So thank you very much.
This is unexpected. Anyhow, thank you. And you and anybody who sat behind the dais knows this town's function the town functions because of volunteers. And I happen to be just one of many. And I hope that you all recognize the importance of all the people who volunteer for work here in the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
Rod, I just want to say thank you very much. I can't believe you stepped down because you've been here pretty much every other meeting since you stepped down. So I just want to thank you for your continued dedication to making sure your replacement, Sophie, is up to speed and has what she needs. So thank you very much. All right, and with that, we'll move on to Meeting House Arts. Suzanne?
Good evening, everyone. I'm supposed to not touch the mic, I'm sure. Good evening. My name's Suzanne Watson. I'm the Executive Director for Meeting House Arts, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight to the Town Council. I also want to start out my comments with an apology for missing my invitation on August 5th. I would not ever give up the opportunity to address you all, and I do apologize for missing the communications cue that I obviously did. So I'm well aware that I'm here ahead of a controversial issue about paid parking. I plan to keep my remarks brief, but I feel compelled to put my case for town support in front of you now when it is critically important to our budget and spending decisions. Our current budget includes support of about $15,000 from the town of Freeport for our continued operation as we grow and expand, as we grow to serve our community, our mission, and the town's needs too. I see this as a two-parter tonight. We have two different but yet complementary reasons for the town to support our work, to fulfill the recommendations laid out by a number of planning efforts undertaken by the town over the last 10 years. It started out with us with a 2018 cultural plan paid for by the town that was the foundation for creating what is today Meeting House Arts. Then there was the 2022 Downtown Vision Plan, and we have these documents. I didn't have the cultural plan up, but the Downtown Vision Plan is here. I essentially extracted the aspects of that plan that deal with arts and culture in the community. There was very specific charters that Dan Pilch wisely sort of proposed to the town. Those we took very seriously and have been enacting them over the last number of years. we now have, of course, the comprehensive plan, which also has a strong element of arts and culture and the value of arts and culture to our downtown and to our community writ large. Then we move into, I wanted to give you some numbers, if you will, numbers that speak to specifically 2024 and the year that we had over almost 6,000 stage attendance, stage audience attendees, 415 stage performers on stage, 44 musical dance theater performances, and almost 2,500 hours of volunteer time just to the stage. Then we move to the gallery. We have a total of 12 gallery exhibits and shows through last year, 93 gallery members. This has held pretty firm since the post-pandemic. 43,000 plus in sales, with some 30,000 plus back to the local artists. We have 70% of the proceeds that we receive from our sales in the gallery go directly back to local artists. We also had 5,092 visitors and 2,700 plus volunteer hours. I kind of go to what Rod said, how valuable. We could not run Meeting House Arts without our volunteers. Public art, I think you've seen in the last year our immersion of a fair amount of public art, both our town community self-portrait that was represented, you saw at the beginning, some of the photos, the outdoor building projections that we did, public art. And we have, of course, the famous Pinkies sitting right outside our door here, who are great ambassadors to our public art to come. And then we have also, if you'll go forward, Len, bringing the vision to life. And that is really taking some of the language from both the 2022 vision plan as well as the comprehensive plan, the various aspects of it. You know, we, Meeting House Arts, have taken it upon ourselves with a creative community to look at promoting vibrancy and community engagement. We have a website that, if you have visited it, is pretty robust with lots of not only our performances, stage and gallery, but also community performances. We've taken a great effort to create a community newsletter first Monday of every month. We post not only our local community events and exhibits and things of interest, but we have sort of featured from the region. We're looking at the southern Maine as opportunities to present art in its bigger regional aspect. To build inclusive cultural access, we have our own Arts Access Fund, which ensures that we have people who can afford to do art classes, art workshops, attend performances. We have an Arts Access Fund that makes it possible to help folks. Encourage collaboration and creative placemaking. We had the National Endowment for the Arts grant that was pretty prestigious, one of 2 in the state and 80 in the nation, which funded our community self-portrait with the photo exhibit. The Pinkies were brought to Town Hall with a great deal of help from you all included. Amplify Freeport's creative identity. We have over 8,000 subscribers to our newsletter. It goes beyond just Freeport. And we highlight local voices, youth, and our richness of place. And in terms of economy, we drive downtown vitality. Public and private spaces activated for art, public art on Main Street, low-cost rental for artists and local groups to keep Main Street active, support civic engagement. Meeting House has served as a venue for town-led public forums, meetings, and community conversations. Return revenue to local artists. I've already said 70% of our proceeds go back to local artists. Boost local spending and tourism. Our events create walkability and expectation that people will stay downtown longer. But this is one of 2 efforts that we have in terms of the community and the giving back, if you will, creating a vibrant downtown and community arts and cultural space. We also look at ourselves to move as we move from our 10th year. This is our 10th anniversary. I don't know if people realize, but Meeting House Arts has been around since 2015. when we were incorporated as a 501c3. We have many illustrious town citizens to thank for our existence. As you well know, they're looking to us now to continue to grow and meet our hopes and vision of expanding the arts in our community. This is a partnership of many, including you, the town council, and the town. Just look at the changes that are going on now. I don't know how much you've watched what's happening at this end of Main Street, but around, and especially around Town Hall. We're growing a nightlife in downtown. Maid has just gone in across the street. Activities are growing in the parklet in front of Historical Society and the Freeport Oyster Bar. You may have not noticed that we had a drag show Saturday night. It was unreal. Our own gallery doing late afternoon art receptions, and of course the Pinkies and the growing public art we can be proud of. We are the arts and historical and cultural section of town, as clearly demonstrated over and over again in our town planning documents, and is designated even by the National Historic Register. We have much to celebrate and to see our town grow and be known as an arts destination. Meeting House Arts is an asset. We're not here as an organization that comes to beg. We are well aware of our role and responsibility to meet our citizens' needs in all aspects of arts and culture and education. We are formally recognized by you, the Town Council, as your local arts agency, a nationally recognized designation of importance. If more time allowed, or perhaps at a later time, I'd love to present the same arts and cultural economic impacts presentation that I presented to the Freeport Chamber's awards ceremony earlier this year. But for now, suffice it to say that we bring the community real value with our work. We bring the town a quality of venue to use for town purposes, and we intend to continue to upgrade and enhance our venue for best serve our meeting space and options in our remarkable downtown. And if you could go back one slide, Len. I put down some of the attributes of the venue itself. The fact that it's a 182-seat by fire code venue. We have a large screen that was helped purchased by, in part, a Momentum grant, a rear focus projector. We have close proximity to the town hall. We have full theater lighting and sound quality equipment, excellent acoustics and a respectful atmosphere. We have great internet connection and recording and streaming capacity. We have content for the community TV that is exemplary. We've had wonderful Freeport speech broadcasts and recordings. We also have a collaborative relationship with the town technical crew and staff. And we're handicap access. And with that, I'm going to close, but I want to thank you all so much for the support you've given Meeting House Arts in the past and will in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Any questions for Suzanne?
I just wanted to note one thing that you said, Suzanne, that I picked up on recently on the website, is that you've taken on the role of community arts calendar, where you're, in addition to all of the arts content that you are producing all around town, you're actively promoting things that are happening in other venues. And I have heard for a very long time that people are looking for that kind of community calendar and they don't find it elsewhere. Visit Freeport has its own version, but for residents who aren't visiting Freeport, that's often not where they're going to look. So I really appreciate the fact that as our designated arts agency, you're taking on that role of really helping connect all the multiple businesses as well as other organizations and the arts all across the community. So thank you.
If I could say thank you for that, too, and that recognition, because that's one of the biggest tasks that we have wanted to take on and have had a hard time finding some of the resources to do that. But we are a firm believer in the idea of cooperation and collaboration. We have wonderful venues in this town. There's no reason we can't be sharing that knowledge and the spaces and to really build that arts destination.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. All right, with that, we will move on now to our town manager's report.
I am excited to announce that the summer vacation schedule seems to be winding down of town staff, so it's great to have my team back. Earl and Caroline both got 2 full weeks out of the office, which is kind of unheard of. Earl is coming back just in time to start work on the project out front, the beautification project. So you will be seeing some activity start there, likely the beginning of next week. We're doing that internally. I do just unfortunately want to report that the budget is likely not going to stretch at this time to a beautiful mosaic in the center of the area, but definitely some nice granite. So we tried.
We'll live.
We tried. The other thing I just want to bring to council's attention is we had kind of a rough year with roadside mowing. And Earl and I met with Caroline earlier today. We're kind of going back to the drawing board with that project, looking at the equipment we're using. We have several informal no-mow areas that maybe were not effectively communicated because a few of them got mowed this year. So we're kind of going back to the drawing board with that program and hopefully going to come back with an improved system so that next year will be better. I am also really pleased to announce that that September 15th, we are on track to commit taxes on September 15th. And unlike, I know lots of people are seeing in the media the huge increases in property value, Freeport over the last few years has had the opportunity to kind of avoid that by doing this annual analysis and recalculation of our cost schedules. So there will be a small increase, but it should be, I think we were talking about less than 5% this year. So just, I'm happy to report that we're kind of going to be steadier than we have been in the last couple of years. Other than that, Town Hall has been very busy with work, but not a lot of people showing up at Town Hall. So we're thinking that with the fall that will come back. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have right now. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. It's been busy in the town manager's office, but mostly dealing with the things that are on the agenda tonight.
Questions for Sophie? All right. So now we'll move on to our first public comment period. So this is limited to comments that are not on items that are not on the agenda for in-person attendees. For folks who do wish to speak, I just ask you keep it to 3 minutes. And folks who are interested in speaking can walk up to the podium and introduce themselves.
My name is Andy Wellen, former town councilor at 83 Hunter Road. So just a quick question, Sophia. So what is the tax rate increase for residential folks? You said around 5% this year?
The value, so it's I
heard it's supposed to be 7% increase this year, yeah.
Yeah, so it was about 7% last year. I think we were looking in the 5 to 7, and the last numbers I've heard have been closer to 5.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's good news. I had heard it was going to be another 7%. So the last 2 years we've had 7%, now 5% increase. In the past years, we tend to have had only 3% increase. To me, that's a crisis in the making here. It's not sustainable for folks who are low or moderate income folks to have 7% increases every year. That's really tough for them, and I think it's just unsustainable. And I think the council should have a goal to collaborate and actually meet with the school board to decide together how we're going to get to inflation-only increases, to cost of living maybe, and we're not doing that. You know, your town council goals will say, oh, let's do fiscal responsibility, but I think you should operationalize that and define that as cost of inflation, which we used to do, but we haven't done the last 2 years. Obviously, it's good news that maybe it's going to be 7% this year. So that's really concerning for me, so I think it'd be good to have those meetings scheduled. And I think that, sometimes when we look at tough decisions for cutting things like dental insurance, at least when I was on the town council, we paid 100% for employees, and no other town in the state, maybe one other state, pays for 100% for employees. Even when I just brought it up, no one even wanted to talk about it, So I think we have to make some tough decisions, because even though some people see negative consequences for certain cuts, there's also negative consequences for doing nothing, which is the low and moderate income, fixed income folks. It's not sustainable. Obviously, affordability is a big issue today, and we have to look at that. So hopefully you guys will take it seriously I have all sorts of ideas. I think we're extravagant in our expenses in the city council, in the city budget. I don't know the school budget so much. So hopefully we can get a grip on that and get back to 3% increases, because otherwise we're just going to become more and more a town for the wealthy, and that's not okay. Anyway, if anyone's interested in starting a group, I'm going to start a group to really hold the council accountable, hold the school budget accountable, because as you know, there's other towns that are starting to get more upset. I see signs like in Oxford area, vote down the school budget, but that's the only leverage town folks have. I know you guys have hard decisions to make and everything's going up in price, but everything has a consequence, including not doing anything. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, my 5% or less is talking about taxable valuation of residential property, not the tax rate increase, just to clarify.
I heard the tax rate increase was 7% last year and supposed to be 7% this year according to the finance director, and that's problematic if that's the case.
That's the case.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Yes.
Go for it.
Find my way over.
Yes, I see Chalmers back there, that's why I'm keeping an eye.
My name's Pierre Chabanel. I'm a retired, my wife has me as a farmer over on Staples Point Road, putting up 2 more greenhouses a year. I live on a fairly limited income, Social Security, and some part-time stuff, and I've been a resident of Freeport for over 21 years, have voted to support the budgets. And I'm happy to be following on the comments, prior comments, because one of the things that has been brought to my attention by someone I've known for a long time and trust the judgment of is the amount we're paying for insurances, and a way to analyze that, health insurance specifically. So, I'm not an expert on this. I've done some discussing, thinking, and I'm not going to go into that. But the point is, there is information that could be shared that's not being shared about what costs are being paid for the educational system as opposed to the municipal system, and who's running it. Like Blue Cross, we've always trusted them. And as one person who's watched my tax rates go up, and I was so happy for the old folks cut off, and then we lost that, which is too bad. So I would like the town to be able to focus in any way on finding ways to not have to pay more than we need to pay for the kind of quality services we're getting already. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, as he does.
No, please.
Dan. Good to see you. Hi. Hi, because it's Jay Yilmaz here from Holbrook Street, and I was here for other stuff I was here for other stuff tonight, but I just wanted to say hello, and please implore you and beg you to try to get the recycling center to open the swap area on Saturdays, if it hasn't already been done, but I don't think it has. I think it's really important that the good stuff doesn't get thrown in the dump, and I know it's a little bit more of a chore for people to do that. The other thing I wanted to comment on, if we are not talking about it in the council meeting, the 4-way stop.
3-way, yes.
5-way, I thought it was at least. You're very sensitive about that, I know. But am I allowed to speak on it real quick?
Sure.
thanks for trying it out as a trial, I suppose, and not permanent. But I kind of got thinking about this idea that was proposed by our consultants. And next time we have a consultant and we pay him a lot of money, I would just ask that we require that their cell number gets put out there to have the feedback for the comments as well as their email, because I think it's going to be, we think we're going to get a lot of comments about it. Just anecdotally, I was at Home Depot the other day talking with the lady at the desk, and she said, "Did you hear what they're doing in Freeport?" And I'm going, "I don't know what they're doing. Paid parking?" She's like, "Oh, no, I didn't hear about that." She talked about this 5-way stop or whatever at Bow Street. So she thought it was, going to cause some problems. But anyway, just want to mention that. Thank you very much. All right. Dan?
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Daniel Freund, and I live at 38 Cheehawk Road in Freeport. First, I just want to have a quick shout out for Meeting House Arts. It's a wonderful addition to our community. I take advantage of the free concerts both in the park and in the park, and go to a lot of Freeport speech presentations. It's a great organization. This evening, I'm coming back to a subject that some of you may recall I've spoken about before. The Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust, which the town of Freeport uses, serves over 450 communities and covers approximately 20,000 employees and dependents. That's from their website. Okay. The Maine Education Association Benefits Trust, which is the schools, and I understand we can only be up or down on it, but they actually use the same broker, the same plan, same Blue Cross, pretty much the same story. Okay. They serve 68,000 educators, staff, and retirees across Maine's 328 school districts. For the public, in 2022, the premiums that were spent by the RSU-5 were slightly more than $500 million. Okay, it's a big number. Neither trust offers any unified online enrollment system or any formal process for removing ineligible dependents. That's 450 communities and 328 school systems, and there's no system to keep ineligible people from enrolling formally. MMEHT has been self-insured since 1983, 25 and 17, it's a long time. Okay, funding its own claims while contracting with Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield for administration. Essentially, there's been no change since 1983. And for the MEABT, it's 1993, 10 years less, but both of them more than 30 years without any change. And I think without much review of what they're doing. Each town has elected officials who oversee expenditures, including health insurance. In RSU-5, using information that they provided based on premiums they paid in 22, 23, and 24, they would save over $800,000 annually, which would replace the 8 people that they just had to get rid of. Although there are literally thousands of fiduciaries responsible for the review of these plans, it is doubtful anyone has sourced medical claim data, the essential component of health costs. I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to keep it to one request, one sentence. I implore the council to ask the trusts, both of them, to provide the medical claim data. The only way to know what things cost is to compare the costs, and it clearly is not being done. An alternative with the same providers in the same facilities providing the identical plans can be obtained at more than a 20% savings. All this discussion about where's my $15,000.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. We're out of time for this comment. I also just want to remind you, this is on the Finance Committee agenda. That's September 22nd at 5 p.m. So I trust you'll be there for that conversation, and we can continue to discuss next steps for your request.
September 22nd?
Yes, at 5 p.m. right here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, and thank you for your patience. I know it took us a little while to get that on the agenda for you. So.
Thank you.
Hi, excuse me, my name is Chalmers Hardenberg. I live at 11 Somerset. First, I just want to second Dan's ongoing effort to get this data, and I'm glad to hear that the Finance Committee is going to handle it. I'm actually here to bring up something I've talked to our town manager and the council leadership about, and that is the effort or the proposal by CSX, the railroad, to raise the bridge over the tracks down here 3.5 feet. So those of us who live on Summer Street, where I do, are going to have to go up another 3.5 feet up an already steep Summer Street. This is also going to affect the public safety building because, of course, police cars and emergency equipment coming out are then going to have to go up another 3.5 feet. And LL Bean is also going to be affected because their employees are going to have to somehow go up another 3.5 feet. Now, CSX is a strong national giant. It's going to be hard for us to persuade or affect some kind of change to get them to reduce it, ideally back to the 19.5 feet, which it is now. I see, as an experienced person watching freight railroads, I see no need for us to have this height, which actually will fit double-stack rail cars underneath, which would, if Rockland had a double-stack port, that would make sense. But neither Rockland nor anybody between Brunswick and Rockland is going to require more than 19.5 feet. So I've asked Sophie, and she's following through on the notion of a stakeholder group. I, as a representative of our condominium, would like to be on the stakeholder group. I would really appreciate the council's support in supporting the idea of a stakeholder group, which would encompass all interested parties, and especially all of us here in town who don't want to see this coming disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Chalmers, and thank you for bringing this up to council, and I look forward to hearing updates on the stakeholder group from both you and from Sophie. Any last public comment, or doesn't have to be the last, but any more? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Joe Miliacho, and I'm following Freeport, South Freeport Road, former town council, planning board, bunch of stuff. So I'm going to hang out for the parking piece because having been a counselor in the 2000s, I learned a lot about that, and it's kind of interesting. But I'm here to speak to Dan Freund's point about the insurance premiums. And when Dan and some folks talked to me about it, I was intrigued, especially given the numbers. And I've done startups in fintech and insure technologies. And Dan knows a lot about this, and I'm going to follow his lead. I want to thank the council for, again, last year answering the call to establish the Finance Committee. However, the challenge with that, for those of us that are advocating for it, I understood it's only the council members on it. So we might open that as that experiment goes. The other thing was, thank you, Council Chair, for letting me know the meeting is September 22nd at 5 p.m. because it's been a bear. I don't see these meetings. I having been one of the people who called for it, I don't see them on the website. I just looked at council meetings, council agendas, and given that it's only councilors, you really should list this Finance Committee on the agenda, please. And
We'll say it's on the calendar right now.
I'm looking at the council meeting agenda. It's not there. So let's not get into back and forth. But thank you very much. And I hope that Finance Committee might be able to invite the town, the RSU 5 appropriate people for the same thing, given what I understand about the two trusts. And something that Dan doesn't know, but I was trying to research these things and finding out who the trustees are and where they come from. There's nothing listed, at least on the employer's benefit site, for the town employees and municipal employees around the state, there's no trustees. You can't find out. I'm like, okay, now I'm really curious. And in the spirit of Bill Diamond, who just passed away, when you can't get an answer to your question, you better keep looking. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, with that, we will close our public comment. And with that, we'll move on to our new business part of the agenda. All right, folks, so the first, actually, it's the consent agenda. I was so excited about the parking conversation, I almost skipped the consent agenda. So we have item 109-25. This is to consider action relative to adopting the consent agenda for tonight. We have an appointment to as the sealer of weights and measures of Brian Batchelder, and we have some miscellaneous donations to the Freeport Community Library. Anything we'd like to pull off for discussion? All right. Councillor Smith, could you please read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that the September 2nd, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right.
And before we get to the next item, as I have done and will continue to do, I'm recusing myself from any of the actions related to the paid parking moratorium.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, so we're moving on to item 110-25. So folks are aware this is the public hearing on the proposed moratorium regarding paid parking facilities in our downtown. I'm sorry. So as folks know, most folks in this room, and for those who don't, Freeport has long relied on the system of free shared parking. And we know that has sort of developed this park once, walk around, stay all day model that we know Freeport has relied on and has kind of led to the downtown we know today. Recently, questions have been raised about whether, how, and if private property owners might transition lots into paid parking facilities. As we know, economic conditions around parking in Freeport have changed. This has primarily raised some broad policy questions. First and foremost, we know Freeport has never defined or developed performance standards for paid parking, so we have no way to regulate paid parking, and nor have we discussed what role paid parking should or should not play in our overall strategy for downtown as we've defined it through our downtown vision, the comprehensive plan, and the Village Corridor Initiative. So really the moratorium tonight, council will be voting on it in 2 weeks, but the public hearing tonight is about the moratorium and whether that is sort of the next step as we embark on the beginning of this policy conversation. The moratorium is not policy. If we pass the moratorium, that's not a decision on paid parking. That's just the avenue of which we will have the discussion of paid parking. And I do want to be clear about the scope of tonight's conversation. We really are here to talk about the policy of paid parking for downtown as a whole. We're not here to talk about specific sites or locations. Councilors are very aware and involved in conversations with parties who are involved with particular instances. I know Councilor Egan, Councilor Pilch, and myself have talked to folks who are party to the agreement and also to each other. Councilor Pilch and I are working on a strategy to move forward to find specific resolutions as necessary. So all that to say, I implore folks to stay on the topic tonight of policy for all of downtown. So following staff's presentation, I will open the floor for public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As I mentioned, council will not be voting tonight. Per statute, formal action cannot be taken until our next meeting in 2 weeks. So, Sophie and Caroline, take it away.
I just want to briefly review. We put a staff memo out, and we're having some website issues, so folks had a really hard time getting to it today. But I think from my perspective, Caroline is the parking expert. She doesn't like that, but we still call her that. I just want to quickly review for folks what the moratorium does and what the legal authority, because there have been questions raised about that. So as we look at the background, in the moratorium, it sounds like when you use the words emergency and it makes it sound much kind of more like a public safety, police, fire coming kind of emergency, and that's just not the case. Moratoriums are a tool that are available to you as part of state law, Chapter 30A, Section 4356, if you wanted to look it up. That pretty much says if there's something that comes along that the town has not adequately provided regulatory framework for, you can look at the idea of this moratorium, which creates a temporary pause. So the reason you're looking at this temporary pause is that in the 80s, the community came together and created the shared parking model, which is reflected in all of our regulatory framework. That shared parking model has lots of places where over the last 30 years, interpretations have developed and staff have looked at it the same way over and over and over again. But when pressed, there is no explicit regulation of charging the public to park other than that shared parking you can't charge the public to park for shared parking. When we look at that, it kind of impacts, the general landscape, and we say, how is that? What are the things what concerns have been raised? And I think the major concerns are a concern that unregulated paid parking might undermine the long-standing and incentivized shared parking system, reduce accessibility for shoppers, residents, employees, and visitors, create inconsistency in land use and site plan compliance, which I will just say can be very, very costly in appeals and legal representation, and negatively affect the economic and social vitality of Freeport's downtown vision. And then the final one is conflict or be incompatible with existing zoning and well-defined planning goals. I know that in general, I don't think the town council likes to just ban things outright without a great deal of public discussion. So the impetus behind this is to put the pause that will allow you to have a full conversation, public policy discussion, and then bring in the planning board to create regulations that adequately reflect the town's, the council's policy decisions. So the moratorium is the memo is 6 pages long, and I really don't want to regurgitate it for you, but I do think there have been questions that have come up around the authority to enact a moratorium. It's explicit in state law that you can do that. The question I know at the planning board came to what is the articulation of serious harm to public health, safety, or welfare, which is the standard that you have to reach in the moratorium. In my memo, I cited 3 different court cases in which the Maine law court came down very emphatically on the idea that it's a prudent tool for municipalities to address a lack of adequate planning. So in the planning world, if you allow something to happen and then take steps to regulate it after, you have to grandfather the people that did it legally while you were trying to figure it out. So this tool is really about let's pause, let's have municipalities make the rules that they want to make. It's not saying that the council is going to act in any specific way in the future. It's not guiding that decision. It's simply pausing to allow you to then begin another process. The emergency element that was discussed significantly at the planning board level, the emergency is a shift in the landscape that you might not then be able to undo later. And it also is about putting everybody on notice that we're taking a pause to figure it out, and if you want to be part of the policy development, feel free to participate. The other piece that I've gotten questions about is, so we all know what happens if the ordinance is adopted, then we engage in this process. I think staff was going to recommend, if you pass the moratorium, that we come back on the 7th of October with some information for you that will help you begin creating some policy guidance to the planning board. If that's something that we can do pretty quickly and it's pretty simple, then I think we could meet the moratorium deadline, which for the initial phase will be December 21st. Of this year. But if you want something nuanced, if you want to think about it more, if you want more public engagement as you create the policy guidance for the planning board, then we probably will look at least one extension. Extensions come in 180-day chunks. However, you don't have to use all 180 days. You can adopt an ordinance that regulates it and repeal the moratorium at any point. The question that came up around if the ordinance is not adopted, things get kind of murky at that point. If you choose not to adopt the ordinance, you're leaving staff with its historic interpretation, which is really hard for us to kind of turn on a dime without some formal guidance from council. And it leaves us in a position where we are going to then issue notices of violation or deny permits based on our interpretation that, if nothing else, in the last 2 months, it has become very clear that people are interpreting the ordinance differently than it has historically been interpreted. So that, just kind of responding to things that we've heard during the public comment period. The other piece is, this is not about one particular incident. However, there have been, of course, a spark that has created this conversation, which has really come back to this idea of nonprofits needing a way to pay for these parking lots. That's been the kind of the majority of the conversations concerned about not allowing paid parking. And in the memo, I did discuss, if that's a place council wants to go, there are a couple avenues that we can talk about how we might look at identifying and protecting parking. And that is not a discussion for tonight, but just that I just didn't want to lose that secondary set of kind of comments that we've been receiving. Caroline, do you have anything you want to add? No? She's happy.
All right. Go ahead.
Can I ask just a question?
Sure.
In my time sitting up here, I found that it's really valuable when the staff, who I have high confidence in, can actually execute with confidence and clear direction when they know what the council is thinking. And at this point, we don't have a resolution on that, on this particular issue, because our ordinance is vague. So from my perspective, am I right on or am I out of bounds to think that the gravity to create the urgency of taking this issue up is so that our staff can actually execute when they have questions come in from property owners? To me, that's maybe at the top of the list. Am I off on that? That's part of the urgency of why we need to have a pause?
That's 100% the urgency of the pause, is to ensure that we fully understand what the policy needs to be and we put the tools in place so that we can carry out what the vision of the town council is with that.
Okay, great, thank you.
And one thing that I think is crucial is, we are on the precipice of implementing things that align with the downtown vision, the village corridor initiative, and the comprehensive plan, that parking was not really part of that conversation. So this would give us the opportunity to be thoughtful and proactive about how we want paid parking, whether we allow it or not, to be a part of that conversation. So, because it will impact it. Anything else from the councilors before we go into the public hearing? All right, so again, 3 minutes for folks to speak. Please just introduce yourself, and with that, I will open the public hearing.
Hi, my name's Daniel Winship, 16 Prout Road. I am absolutely for the moratorium. I do not agree that paid parking is for Freeport. One person starts it, it will peter on down to other people that want to do it. And then, of course, you have an advocate for LL Beans here. Hate to tell you, but LL Bean controls everything in this town, whether you believe it or not. Walk out to the road, look down the road. It's almost a clear shot. Their efforts for the summer stuff brings business here, and lots of it. There hasn't been that this year. Of course, the less these businesses make money, the more taxes are going to have to go up. There's no way around it. So, thank you for hearing.
Thank you, Dan. It doesn't bite, I promise.
Yeah, Jay Yilmaz, Holbrook Street. I know and respect Dan a lot, and just want to say how much I appreciate LL Beans, and think that this summer, I've talked to a lot of people up and down the East Coast and throughout the country, and there's been slow times in a lot of other places. So in my nightly prayers, I thank Beans as one of those who's made our lives good. To just be short, I think Sophie gave great advice, and that just gives the opportunity to take a pause, and it just makes total sense. As long-winded as I can be on this subject, I was telling one of my friends and mentors and a big real estate guy about this, and he just kind of paused and he said, "Are you done?" I said, "No, I got a few more things." And he said, "Are you done?" And he said, "Jay, the free parking is the golden goose for Freeport and the image that it has brought for all these years." And he's been developing in Freeport for 40 years. And I think a lot of the old developers do too. So before you allowed paid parking, I would just proceed cautiously. So thank you for your attention to this.
Thank you.
Joe Miliaccio, South Freeport Road. I just want to speak in favor of this. I was sitting next to Mr. Malone, and I'm like, how did we miss this? I don't know. How did we get this? We've usually got so much clarity, and think of the decades you've been working on tweaking ordinances. So I'm going to speak in favor of it, but I want to say that, as I alluded to earlier, free public parking has been ingrained in our ordinances. The big one I had to deal with on the planning board and the council was when we opened and approved the TIF and zoning for Freeport Crossing, or the parking garage. And as part of that, conditions on that, it was required that that property remain, as long as it's a parking garage, it remain open to the public. So keep an eye on that one, and that should be somewhere in writing. And especially on that property, since over the term of the tax increment financing on that property, it was a credit enhancement TIF, something like, I think, 20 years or until $20 million was returned. So I think we've given all the money we need there, and that property exists because of a lot of public benefit. However, be careful as we go forward. Things that I encountered that you can probably read about in the paper on freedom of access challenges was across from the parking garage, there were a lot of venues and businesses and establishments. And one of the things I was upset about was when a new business, at that time, I remember it was GAR, and these people got to pay sometimes because of parking requirements in our ordinance, hundreds of dollars to secure extra park a month, to secure extra parking from the town managed and run pool. So that was really upsetting, and nobody ever wanted to help that out. But if you are within a certain number of spaces and you're a small business like a cabaret or a small little wine bar tucked into a small place that only allows you 3 or 4 spaces, you might allow some carve-outs or look at it for within so many feet of a free sufficient parking facility. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Webster. I live on Lavers Pond Road in Freeport. My comment is, I don't know a great deal about this. I was surprised to hear about charge parking in Freeport, and I was like, what? I mean, I went to Portland recently to visit a friend who had just started a store, and the parking spot in front of their store was $20 an hour. And so, of course, it alarmed me that Freeport might, cook the golden goose. And so I'm going to say I don't know a great deal about it. I'm pleased you're going to take the time, I hope, with a moratorium to think carefully about this. But I just remember back to 2 things, and I want to speak about briefly. One is I was surprised when I learned that the town council many years ago, or some years ago, reduced the number of spaces required by businesses. And I realized very quickly from hearing from friends that it impacted several nonprofits in this town. They lost revenue, and I believe that in the process they also still had to be responsible for the cost of having the parking that they were somehow engaged with. And so obviously I can see heads nodding. You know this. I ask you to think very carefully about that. As a member of an organization here in town, I would like to see my dollars go towards the nonprofit and not towards parking that's being transitioned from a retail industry to a nonprofit. The second thing I want to mention was that several years ago during the strategic planning, downtown planning, people talked about reducing the amount of parking needed because we could have more residential space. And I recall being here one time working on a building here in town and having very difficult time finding a place to park to work, to get to that building. I finally did get a space, but when I was done, it was a big event going on in town. When I was done, I left, and I remember hearing people saying, well, people don't like to park in the parking garage, but the parking garage is always empty. So I went into the parking garage, and I drove through both levels, and I made a very quick count of the number of parking spaces. And I'm a little fuzzy about exactly what it was, but I think there was 180 empty spaces in the parking garage. And then I left, and I remembered that at that time there was a proposal for Maidenform, that whole area to become a new residential parking area, of which there wasn't going to be adequate amount of parking for the number of apartment dwellers in that. And so I decided, well, I'll just go through there. And I counted the number of parking spaces in there, and that was about 180 spaces. So the parking lots were all full. There was some space in the parking garage. People were driving around trying to find parking places. It took me 20 minutes of people driving around looking to go to Bow Street Market to get lunch, and about 20 minutes to drive back because people were all jammed up in the streets. So I'm not sure whether we have all the excess parking you're talking about in order to have Freeport become a place where people think I can go there on an event day like the 4th of July or one of the Makers in Maine or something. I think that is part of the golden goose, is to make sure that there's always a parking space available and people aren't going around town looking for parking. I just hope you're thoughtful about all those issues, especially the fact that there are nonprofits who are covering the costs for for-profits, it seems to me, and that they are part of our golden goose also. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to kind of shout out Sophie and the staff here, because that was heard loud and clear that nonprofits are being impacted, and part of the moratorium would be making sure that policy would kind of address some of those concerns. So.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Jared Levin. My wife and I own Chilton Furniture on Lower Main Street and a retail property in the downtown area as well. We would like to encourage the council to pass a moratorium. A decision of this magnitude should be given the thought it deserves and should not be rushed or be done in a haphazard manner in any sense. I'll try not to talk about the same issues I talked about last time I spoke. But we do live in a time of change that we're all very familiar with, which is the impact of the internet on downtown areas and on retail shopping. And at times it feels like we live in a time of small town USA against Amazon. And unfortunately, for the last few decades, Amazon has been winning. Every single year, a higher percentage of the customer's wallet gets allocated to online spend instead of spending in stores with local businesses. The results of that in other communities have been higher vacancies and at times even fully hollowed out downtowns. So it can be depressing, but the good news is no one believes that physical retail is going away entirely. But there will be winners and losers. And that could also mean winning communities as well as losing communities. And I suspect from working in retail, a lot of it will come down to momentum. And when shoppers visit a community, if they see vacancies, they come away with a feeling, kind of a destitute feeling that this is a dying shopping area. And that's the impression they're left with, and that's what they tell their friends and neighbors, and it impacts their repeat visitation. At the same time, if they go to a shopping destination that is full and robust with limited vacancies, they remember that as well, and that helps form the reputation of the town. And I think you're going to see a pretty rapid and building of momentum between the destinations that are winning and the destinations that are losing and dying. And when you start down that negative path, it could be very hard and expensive to reverse. I work in South Portland. Every year I see more and more vacancies at the main mall. I see parking lots that look like deserts with cracks in them and growing weeds. We have a store in Portland. Congress Street, I believe, now has 10 or 11 vacancies along Congress Street. We hear that Kittery is not doing that well. So at a time of structural pressure on physical retail, this could be an opportunity for us because, believe it or not, Freeport might be doing better than many. Tawny's been doing some fantastic work in trying to keep the vacancies as low as possible. But if we have a spark, this is the perfect time to keep fanning that spark until we build momentum and gain sort of a virtuous cycle. And so it just seems like the wrong time to do anything that could suppress visitation. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fitzrandolph, 19 East Street. I'm not even going to pretend I have any idea of how the shared parking is paid for amongst the businesses, but just as someone who lives in Freeport, who walks through town every day, who is a frequent shopper in town, the idea of paid parking is the best way to crush a lot of the new businesses that we're seeing pop up. I feel like Freeport, I've been living here for almost 25 years, and I feel like Freeport is finally starting to get some personality. We have some small businesses. We have some more local businesses. I'm feeling less like I'm living in a mall and more like I'm living in a town. And when you start restricting what we can do as local people, just popping by to pick up something quick, or just limit with paid parking, like going into Portland and having to figure out how to pay, I think that's going to just really restrict people coming here. And I'm kind of liking the vibe, and I think we need to just keep it as it is to have that continue. And I was just thinking when I was walking here from my house that I was like, yeah, okay, Old Navy, I need to pick up something for my son. Oh, but I can't. I got to run into town. I got to pay for parking. I might as well just order it online and then not walk and get a coffee at the local coffee shop. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, Tawny Whitney. I'm actually here tonight wearing the hat as Business Development Director for FEDC. And I do want to state that this is not about one nonprofit's hardship. This is an economic emergency for downtown Freeport. Our vacancy rate is the lowest it's been since 2013, but that is fragile. When you talk about that hometown feel that she just described, that is a very fragile position that we are paying very close attention to. And the precedent it reaches it's serious risk if we were to implement paid parking. Some people say that there's no emergency with paid parking, but the Walker study actually says a different story, and that is that we can't risk any prominent parking spots for our shoppers, our diners, and our tourists. That is what keeps our downtown so vitally impressive. That's what's bringing it back. We can't lose one of those. I mean, the statistics that we used to have years ago where we had 4 million people visiting Freeport, those numbers have declined, but over the last couple of years, with the effort, the community effort that we've been seeing, those numbers are going up again. And I also have to say those efforts are supported by what LL Bean is doing, as I heard a couple of times tonight. When we see what they do, and when you go outside of the Freeport line, and I don't like to leave very often because it's very important to me here, but when you do, you do hear that. You hear about some of the things that have changed in Freeport, that hometown feeling, the vibrancy that LL Bean brings, the liquid beverages that Maine Beer brings. This is all about cooperation. And shared parking isn't about subsidizing companies. It's about cooperation. Our system works, not just with parking, but about that cooperation. And I just hope that you take a moment, as I think we usually do, to pause and be thoughtful. I appreciate the forum to take in the public comment, but I do urge you to take in the moratorium to reflect. So thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Hi, I'm Maria Nappi. I'm the president of the Freeport Chamber. First off, I just want to echo what Sophie has said and how she did such a great job setting the stage, making it very easy to understand on kind of what the situation is and how we can move forward if we do pass the moratorium. I also want to echo what Tawny said, as well as a bunch of other speakers tonight. I think that passing the moratorium is absolutely crucial for this town. We're going to damage Freeport's identity if you show up and it's just a patchwork of, do I have to pay, do I not have to pay? That creates confusion and frustration for the shopper, and that sets a really bad tone for their visit to Freeport, making them spend less, making them stay less, making them not want to return. I think this pause is essential to protect our businesses, to protect our visitors, and the future of downtown as we work together to create a good solution that will support everyone, including nonprofits and large retailers and small retailers. We really can't afford to let a small, short-term decision create long-term problems for this town. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Valerie Williams. I live in North Freeport off Cedar Lane. I have zero direct ties to any commerce in the town. I just wanted to start by, I know we weren't supposed to speak to the moratorium, maybe that was the outline.
Speak on the moratorium, absolutely, okay. Yes.
I only have a brief comment, which is just because something is a norm doesn't make it good or bad, but changing that norm should be done thoughtfully, and I think the moratorium gives us that chance to keep the norm while we change it thoughtfully. That said, I'm totally against paid parking. Could not be more against it. As a North Freeporter, there's nothing near me. If I want something and want to buy locally outside of the North Freeport store, I come to town. I am more than 2 miles away. So that means I'm, in most cases, parking, especially these days with 22 under construction. I'm not riding a bike. If I'm coming into town, I try to keep my dollars as local as possible. My husband feels exactly the same. If we have to buy from a large entity, we try to do it in person, so at least the employment dollars are staying locally. We really feel strongly about that. That said, it's more expensive to do that. It just is. Amazon is a thing for a reason. Walmart.com for a reason. It's cheaper. I understand people who have to stretch their dollar doing the cheaper thing, totally understand that. Those of us who are making a concerted effort to keep our money as locally as possible, it's a lot harder if we're now paying for parking each and every time we're trying to buy something. It just doesn't work for your local economy. I mean, it's great to bilk the tourists. Great, let's do that. There's no way to make that kind of line that works. If we're going to continue year-round to shop, and we're the ones that hold up that economy most of the year, is the locals, it has to be free. It has to be. And it's the only way to really show off the community as a community. Otherwise, it's Disneyland. There are no locals downtown if we're paying for parking. And that doesn't feel the same. I see my friends and my kids' friends, and we're saying hi, and we're downtown. I was at the drag show. It was great. Highly recommend. Saw lots of people I know there. It was a great community event. It would have been more money if I had to pay for parking. It would have made me reconsider, am I willing to pay for the front row tickets, which, again, highly recommend. I would have thought about it another time. Maybe not bought that second drink. Maybe not bought some popcorn. It just is a better way to spend our dollars, is to keep putting them back into the community.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Reike. I'm at 24 Emu Street. And I also am a small business owner in Freeport. I own Gingham, which is at 25 Bow Street. And we moved in to Freeport about a year and a half ago to that location. So I'm not going to read the 7 points that my husband sent me from ChatGPT on why Freeport should not have paid parking. I will say I fully support the moratorium. I think doing anything thoughtfully and taking the time to do it right just makes sense. I obviously also don't support paid parking. I feel so lucky to be in Freeport, where access is so easy. I hear time and time again from my customers, I love coming to Freeport. It's so much easier to shop here than going to Portland. I don't have to pay to park. I can just pop in. And I hear that from locals and folks from out of town as well. I also think we're, as we heard from some other folks, we're on the cusp of really having more and more local businesses. And if a local business is thinking, well, should I move into, this town or Freeport? I want them to choose Freeport. And I think having free parking is a really great reason to do that. So anyway, I hope you'll support the moratorium. And I'm really happy to be part of the Freeport community. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Also, your store is great, just saying.
Good evening. My name is Regina Helfer. I live at 103 Bow Street, so just outside of town, which is nice. My husband and I started vacationing here back in 1996 from upstate New York. We were able to go anywhere we wanted to. We wanted to come to Maine, and we wanted to come to Freeport. 9 years ago, we moved here. One of the reasons we moved here was because of the friendliness of the community here, of the people and the town and the workers and LL Bean. We come into town all the time. We walk our dogs all the time. I don't want to pay to park to walk my dogs. I don't want to pay to park to bring my dogs to LL Bean so that they can visit with the employees during the holidays. We saw what happened in Bar Harbor when they paid for parking. They got a lot of money, Bar Harbor did. We see what's starting to happen in Camden with the parking for certain spaces. What I think about here for your moratorium is there's a lot of employees that park in town. A lot of these employees don't make a lot of money. So who's going to pick up that? I look at LL Bean and I say, well, they could afford to pay for the employees parking while they're here because they're a big company. What about these other companies that want to keep their employees, but they can't afford to pay for their parking, and the employees can't afford to work, so where do you go? So please, when you're thinking about the moratorium to do that, think about those other people that are not visitors, they're not tourists, they're people that are trying to make a living here. And we want to stay here. If I have to pay for parking, I'm not going to come into town. That's all there is to it. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we have our next comment, we do have the chair of the planning board on Zoom asking to speak, so we'll let him speak.
Hey, thanks for letting me be here remotely. Sorry I can't be here in person tonight, but I did just want to say a couple of things really quickly. I am, first of all, speaking not as the chair of the planning board, but as just a Freeport resident. I live on Main Street, walking distance to town, and my name is Sam Kapala. I think I'm supposed to say that, right? So as the council is definitely aware, the planning board looked at this issue and there was a split vote. We had 6 members present. This was last month's meeting. So the board, after listening to everyone in the room, I think everyone in the room, with the exception of one person from LL Bean, represented the viewpoint of local nonprofits. So the board did come to a split decision. I think one thing that the board, it was not split on, it was very clear to me that the board wants to move quickly to resolve this issue. This is something that came, I think the fact that this is an issue came out of parking requirements being lowered a couple of times over the past few years. It changed the balance of the shared parking pool and reduced demand. And I think the hope, and I think everybody on the board, and I think hopefully the business community feels the same, that that was the right move to try to lower the parking requirements in town and alleviate the burden on businesses for paying for parking. But I think the pandemic and some other factors didn't quite come in and raise that pricing quite as quickly to rebalance the shared parking pool. So it's an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in. And the planning board is very committed to resolving this as quickly as possible. Nobody wants to see local nonprofits struggle. Nobody feels like that is the right outcome or an outcome that could have been foreseen. So it's not that anybody is in favor of putting a burden on local nonprofits or anyone else for that matter. The goal of this whole process is to be fair and transparent. For me personally, I am very much in favor of the moratorium. I think Sophie said it really well at the top of the segment, so to speak, here. And I think the moratorium really is a chance for the town to pause and is a chance for us to make the right policy moves. And if we were to do nothing and not enact a moratorium, I don't think that helps the local nonprofit community or anyone else either, because it just prolongs the uncertainty and leaves town staff in the difficult position of trying to enforce a very unclear ordinance. So I feel bad that the ordinance is as unclear as it is. It's one of these things that wasn't a problem until it was. So it has not been on the board's radar that this lack of clarity around paid parking and what it would mean to switch from shared parking to paid parking and all of the standards that might need to go with that's not something we've had to deal with. It's something we're committed to dealing with quickly now. And to me, again, a moratorium gives the time to do that. And I really hope to see the moratorium enacted and to see this kicked back to the planning board, and happy to work with the council to move this swiftly forward so we can make it clearer and better for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. All right, moving back to in the room.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, council members. My name is, just want to make sure the HVAC, okay. All that's welcome, so thank you. My name is Katie Wise. I am the Director of Design and Construction at LL Bean. We've been in a lot of previous forums, and I've expressed our opposition to paid parking and our support for the moratorium, and tonight is no different. We stand behind both those positions and reiterate our belief that paid parking is an economic emergency for the town of Freeport. But tonight, I do want to start a little differently. We are, LL Bean, a family-run business. We were born right here in Freeport in 1912. Our first storefront opened on Main Street in 1917. We've grown, yes, but we've never stopped investing in this town. This is our home. We've learned a lot over the past century about what makes a business successful. And the one thing we know for sure, convenience starts long before someone pays for a parking spot. The customer journey starts when somebody decides to get in their car, drive to Freeport, and walk into a store. Or, like many have said tonight, they can stay home and shop online in seconds. Brick and mortar retail isn't easy. We've been doing it for over 100 years and can state with certainty that paid parking is a deterrent to visitors and customers. It is a barrier, not a convenience. The idea that customers will pay for a convenient parking spot is short-sighted. We have data that supports this. LL Bean runs over 60 regional stores outside of Freeport. One of these stores implemented paid parking in 2022. Since paid parking was introduced, customer traffic dropped by nearly 10%. Almost to the day, this store loses $500,000 annually. It is a compounding issue as customer patterns change. They no longer come, they find different shopping areas or ways to shop. In short, paid parking means fewer visitors, which means fewer sales, fewer jobs, and fewer opportunities for all of us. As you can see, this issue is so much bigger than a few parking spots. It's about what could happen if we allowed paid parking to continue unregulated without considering development, progress, or our reputation as a visitor-friendly town. Imagine that small sample size spreading through town without regulation. Imagine the same experience we had with paid parking as other towns and cities right here in Freeport. This is why paid parking is an economic emergency for Freeport and why a moratorium is necessary. Yes, we are a large organization, but we're also a family business, founded here, rooted here. Tonight we come to the council as a business in Freeport and ask you to vote for a moratorium. We urge the council to pass the moratorium as paid parking in Freeport does present an economic emergency. Let's pause, reflect, and do this the right way. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, councilors. My name is Mark Malone, and I'm not a Freeport resident, but I've been on the FEDC board for 24 years, and I've been active in brokerage in this community for about the same length of time, having helped many tenants find spaces and helped many landlords try to find tenants. And I can tell you, first of all, to clarify something, Freeport has paid parking already. So it is alive and well. And on the FEDC board about 10 years ago, we undertook an effort to try to reduce the burden on tenants, because what we were finding is the groundswell of retail from the from the discount, losing the word, but the discount outlet store shopping, as it declined, the burden of parking started to become really troublesome. If you looked at landlords' balance sheets, it was costing the tenants $5 to $7 a square foot just to pay for parking, and the parking ratios that were in place were excessive. They were way higher than anybody else would require if you went to a town of Scarborough and built a shopping center. So we lobbied for a reduction in the profit in the parking spaces, being quite aware that would impact the nonprofits, but trying to find a balance. And by lowering the parking burden, we were able to lower the tenants' burden and make it make them more able to stay in the town. And rents at that time were also up around $40 and $50 a square foot. We talked, recently, Tawny was in an article that, Freeport's vacancy rate is down to 5%, the lowest it's been in a long time. Don't be fooled by that. That is extremely fragile, as she mentioned. It's very, very fragile. Many of the tenants are not even paying rent. They're paying percentage rents only. There's no base rent. There's no participation in CAMs. There's no participation in taxes. Freeport Village Station came up for auction, a year or so ago. I believe the assessed value of this village station was about $44 million at the time it came up for auction. They just got reassessed for $14.5 million. Rents are way down. Tenants are, and they still have a lot of legacy tenants in there that are paying higher rent. I don't think they've seen the bottom in that center. So yes, the tenants are here, but it's not robust, and it's implementing paid parking would be the death knell to the growth that's already started. It really would be. It would just end it. And I think that there are avenues for nonprofits. I know the nonprofit in question here was offered 4 times to sell their property, relieve themselves of the burden of having to carry the carry costs, but they didn't want to sell it. Okay, that's their prerogative, that's their choice. But there are other options, and as we look at solutions, perhaps one of the solutions might be to allow paid parking, but to do it on a monthly basis, because we have a new industry coming to town, and that new industry is housing. And as housing comes to town, there's going to be need for additional parking. We might allow for 1 parking space per unit, but there's likely 2 people there. So why not allow some of those renters to rent on a monthly basis, but do away with hourly parking, not allow hourly parking? That could help the nonprofits. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. I don't think any of them have been explored yet, but I sure hope that you pass the moratorium so that more creative and optimal solutions can be reached. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
My name's Ken Sparta. I live at 23 South Street, right over here. I have a sandwich shop right over there. I have a bar right up there on Main Street. And I'm going to go off topic here a little bit and say we shouldn't have a moratorium. I think you guys should just vote against paid parking right now. I don't think we have heard too many people here say paid parking is a great idea. I've heard people say we should figure out a way to support nonprofits, and we can definitely do that. I do it at my places as often as I can. That drag show is a great example. And we can't do events like that if we have a parking lot behind us that people have to pay to be in. So just skip over the moratorium and do what's right. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Hi, Mary Babakin. I'm the president of the Freeport Historical Society. And thank you to the nod to nonprofits. And I also love free parking. But we had an issue since the rules changed with the town, and we don't have a good way to fill our budget anymore. I just want to clarify that free parking isn't in fact free. Parking lots are expensive to maintain, taxes have to be paid, and we use valuable land to park cars. What you're asking is not for free parking, you're asking for someone to cover those costs so that you can park for free. And that's actually subsidized parking. And subsidized parking makes sense for businesses because customers come and they park in the lots and they shop in the stores and they eat in the restaurants and they spend money, and the cost of covering the parking lot gets rolled into the cost of doing business. Freeport Historical Society is different in that we are a small organization that serves the community. We preserve history, we have educational programs, we do historical research, among other things. We have 3 employees, we have dedicated volunteers, and we have dues-paying members. And we support ourselves with those dues, generous donations from, the community, and our fundraising events. When people park in our lot or they use our lot for parking, we don't make any income. We lose money on that. Over the last 5 years, we have spent $7,000 a year to cover the maintenance costs of parking. And this past year, we were presented with an estimate for $33,000 to do repaving of the surface. That is a very big sum to try to adjust into our budget. And I have heard from several of our members that they do not want their dues going to paying for the cost of covering the parking lot that serves primarily retail shoppers. I don't think that Freeport Historical Society, a small nonprofit, should subsidize private business. We had hoped, and I understand that this didn't work out so well, that by bringing a paid parking company into Freeport, that we would be able to utilize our valuable piece of land and also fill holes in our budget. Based on comments tonight, I'm thinking that wasn't well received, but I am hopeful that the town will help us find another solution. So, thank you.
Good evening, Andrew Arsenault. I was on the planning board the other night when we voted on the moratorium, and Sam's done a great job explaining what we talked about. But I'm also sitting, last week we sat on the Board of Assessment Review, and we worked on the assessment of the Freeport Village Station. And it was quite an education. We had a nice assessor, Mark Goulet, came in to oppose the town's assessor. And I got a real education on what's going on in that building and what's going to happen in other buildings. And I do feel for the Historical Society. They got caught in a bad spot with the parking lot changes, but we can't mess up the whole town because there are other buildings that are, like, as Mark said, some of these tenants aren't paying anything or very little. And a lot of these buildings, I believe, are right on the edge, and we're starting to come back. People are starting to come. Tawny and FEDC and the Chamber are working really hard to fill these spaces. But I still have people tell me when they drive through town it looks empty. And I'm going, well, but we filled this space and this space and this space. And the next time I see them, yeah, but the town still looks empty. So we don't want that perception to keep going. And with that perception, like other people said, if that's the perception, people don't come. And if they come and they see paid for parking, then they come less. And I've had people tell me they had to go to Portland and go to a 2-hour meeting. It cost them $25 or $30, $40 to go to a 2-hour meeting. I don't go to, I grew up, we went to Portland in '76 as soon as we got out of high school because the old port was booming, and that was the place to be. And the busiest street in the old port was the Exchange Street, and people just circled because they wanted to park there. So, but you go to Portland now, unless you park in a couple of small lots or you go someplace where they'll knock your ticket, nobody goes to Portland. Nobody I know wants to go anymore because it's a fight for parking. I know a little something about Beans parking because my first job out of high school was standing there with 2 other guys in the summertime helping people park cars for Beans. We vacuumed the parking lot, we tagged clothes, and we made sure people didn't bang into each other. And people at Beans has always promoted good parking, try to take care of their customers, really customer engagement up there. We met a bunch of cool people back in the 70s, and it was a cool place, and it was a fun job. But they've always been hot on parking. They've always tried to have customer engagement. We were supposed to dress up, vacuum the parking lot, get all the cigarette butts up back then. And, but just please remember, Village Station, other retails, are they on the edge? Are they not? We really need to think about that and the real impression you're going to do when you throw up that blue UPP sign in the corner of a parking lot. And they're doing it over in Yarmouth at the Catholic Church, and now they've got a sign up there how much it costs, and it's like, my friends that live in Yarmouth, when we drive up the street, and I say, why are they doing that? What's going on here? So be careful of the impressions. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Anybody else who want to speak?
Oh, here comes that one. Well, hopefully I'm the end. I'm Sally Walsh. I no longer live here, but I am still on the Board of Trustees of the Historical Society. And I would like to present a promo to flip the script a bit. We've heard enough about parking and moratoriums and all the other things, but I want to invite you to our garden and our yard and sit down and have a glass of wine and go to the oyster bar and enjoy it and come and visit, because this is part of the town that we've talked about as being a town and a community, and when you drive in, it's a totally different experience from any place else. So we want to keep it like that. But I am a trustee because I'm old, and I've been here long enough, so I knew L.L. Bean. And L.L. Bean lived on Holbrook Street, and he used to drive up the main street, come down Nathan Nye, where I lived, because that community area, that neighborhood had 20 homes with gardens and trees and lawns and neighbors and rents and apartments and stuff. And L.L. Bean used to drive by. Actually, I'm wrong. He never drove. His second wife, Claire, drove. He sat in the back and waved through green-tinted automobile windows. All I could think of as a kid is, how did they get that windows green in that car? It was unusual. So then he'd circle around and go up to the back. And on the Moore Street was his oldest son, Carl. And his youngest son, Warren, which we knew was Warnie, lived on Elm Street. My father and Carl were best friends. They played pro ball. So there's history there that's a community that's fun to look at and to talk about, and all that stuff is in stories at the Historical Society. And I volunteered there one afternoon, and the first call that came in, I went, I have no idea what they're asking. And it had to do with somebody, and I'm not going to say who, because it sent me, thanks to the executive director who was giving me guidance, to a book that was called, the subtitle was The Story That Made Mark Twain Famous. And I picked it up and I started reading. It was the best thriller I'd read in months. So it's there. So, and all your family's belongings are also there. When you look at a disaster and the people looking through their stuff, so when their homes are destroyed, they're not looking for the appliances. They're looking for the photographs. They're looking for the door jambs where their kids had things. They're looking for the etched glass pitcher that was passed down in 4 generations. We take that stuff and preserve it and protect it, and it's in an archival vault that the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, L.L. Bean, has one like it. But it's to preserve all the town's artifacts and keepsakes. So that's what we're doing, and I think everybody should come and have a glass of wine, sit on the porch, look at the things we have, and talk about leaving us your stuff. Thanks.
All right, anybody else? All right, I will go ahead and anybody online? Nope. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you all for hanging out with us tonight and sharing your thoughts. I do want to invite, as I mentioned, council will not be voting on this for 2 weeks per statute, which I know makes it a longer process. I do want to invite some council conversation for reactions and thoughts. I agree with most everything I heard tonight, a lot of echoing of being thoughtful and intentional and being proactive versus reactive. I appreciated the conversation around employees and residents. Before I lived in Freeport, I was one of those employees who counted on free parking to be able to work downtown. So I understand how valuable that is. So I just, I do want to say we'll vote in 2 weeks, and I'm certainly in favor of this moratorium. Councilor Pilch.
Thanks. I just want to point out our role in all this to be as transparent as we possibly can. It's been pointed out to me that there's information that we have that not everybody has, so I want to make all that clear that, and I don't think this is anything secret, it's all public knowledge, that the reason Councillor Smith is stepping down is because he's executive director of the Freeport Historical Society, which is involved in one of the potential paid parking scenarios. So he steps down in public. He also steps down in any conversations that we have in executive session. So I don't think there's anything unusual or unfair about that. I just wanted to make that clear. As much as I'm intrigued by Ken's proposal to say, why don't we just ban it tonight? We can't. As the chair points out, we can't even vote on the moratorium tonight. We have a public hearing tonight. We need to let the public digest that and have us digest it. The earliest we can vote on the moratorium is at our next meeting in 2 weeks. Even following that, if we change what's allowed and permitted on different lots in town, we can't unilaterally do that as a council per state law. We have to allow the planning board to consider it first, so we can recommend it to the planning board, get their take on it, and then it would come back to us. So it's a slow process. It's going to take a while. We like to move quickly. There are some things we can't move that quickly on. And one last thing I want to talk about with the planning board. I watched the meeting that they had, and there was some really good, vigorous debate last month at their meeting with 3 in favor and 3 against. And the 3 in favor of the moratorium were pretty vocal about why they were in favor of the moratorium. The 3 who voted against were pretty quiet. So it was hard to understand the reasons against them supporting the moratorium. So I'm hopeful that if we do refer it back to the planning board, we'll get a little bit more clarity on where each of them stands when they vote next time. I have a lot of thoughts on the moratorium, on paid parking in general. I don't think tonight's the right forum for that. I like the forum that we had with the public last time where we really got to dive into this issue and only this issue. So if we do get to the point where we're debating policy, I think that would be a great idea to resurrect something like that. But for now, I'm in support of the moratorium, or I will be in 2 weeks anyway. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll say I'm also for the moratorium. We need to be thoughtful about this, like we are with everything. Look how long it took us to put the comprehensive plan, downtown visiting. So taking our time is what we do.
Absolutely.
So along those lines, what is our plan? Should the next meeting we vote on this, we enact a moratorium? If that's the route we take, how are we going to move the ball? Because at that point, the moratorium is 3 months into effect. We have 3 months more, we can extend it, but like, I really don't have an interest in like just seeing this labor on for, I won't even venture a guess at a timeline, but I think we need an outline of an action plan and who's going to work on it and how we're going to engage the community and stakeholders. And it needs to be realistic, but it can't, we just can't sort of muddle our way through this.
Yeah. So I will say that Sophie and I are getting good at this being a team thing because we anticipated this question, and there is a timeline in the memo that talks more about sort of the policy side of it, of sending it back to the planning board, and then depending upon how complicated our policy suggestions might be, how long that process might take. But one thing I don't know we really thought about, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts about it, is any future public input on those policies.
So, and Kyle can jump up at any moment if I go astray, but from staff's perspective, I think staff needs to understand from the council what its vision is. And the one thing that, listening to the planning board conversation I took away at least, was that the planning board is really good at taking the policy guidance of the council and creating the regulatory framework. In the absence of that policy guidance, I really saw the planning board struggle a little bit with understanding kind of the overarching things that the council has already kind of chewed on with the downtown visioning and the comprehensive planning process that's kind of coalesced in the council goals and other things. So the first thing that you would see from staff is a recommendation that on October 7th, if you were to pass the moratorium, on October 7th, we would be bringing Kyle back to the podium to kind of talk through what the spectrum of potential regulatory framework could be, what the policy guidance could be, and then to kind of hopefully engage in other business in those conversations so that staff can begin to understand where council is. If you did something like allow it with no regulation or prohibit it with no exception, that is very easy for us to go through a regulatory process. There isn't a lot of thought that has to go through with that. But there's this whole spectrum in the middle where you could allow it in certain areas, you could not allow it, except with certain regulatory, performance standards. So the more nuanced that decision is, the longer it's going to take. We need to also understand, so Joanna and I were talking about stakeholder meetings, and my question for Joanna is, what are you looking for information? We had a workshop where we asked one question, and so what is the additional information or the additional stakeholders you're looking for? That would be something for us to talk about on the 7th. So once we understand what the policy guidance is, staff can very quickly frame out the steps to get you where you need to go. But in general terms, I think having council say, this is what we think we really want the ordinance changes to ultimately give us as a result, and planning board, can you make that happen? It would then go to the planning board, and depending on how complicated it is, it could be one meeting or 3 or 4 meetings. And then it would come back to the council after it went through the planning board process. So I could see us, if it was a simple decision, policy-wise, I could see this being finished by the turn of the new year, while not skipping the public process. If it's nuanced, I think you're going to need another 4 or 5 months. But this particular issue, where you have a moratorium that drives, in order to renew a moratorium, you have to be able to find, with a straight face, and really mean it, that progress has been made. So you can't let it sit. So it becomes the priority.
Thanks for articulating that, Sophie. That was going to be one of the 2 things that I just want to add at the end. I'm with Matt that I think we should have an action plan, and I'm glad to hear that the legislation around moratoria, is that the plural, moratorias? Yep. Requires us to demonstrate, if we were to even potentially to consider extending it, which I think we'd be able to get it done in that time frame. I have high confidence that if we are to focus on that in a relatively concise time frame, that the planning board, to get to Dan's point, would be able to take action. We've handed them thorny, sticky, controversial issues like cannabis and height restrictions on buildings and preserving public space in the interest of development and conservation. And they've handled all of those things because that's an excellent board. So we shouldn't be afraid to give them exactly the direction that this group decides after hearing from the public, and I have confidence they'll be able to return that all in that 6-month time frame. So I just wanted to point that out, that I'm hopeful that we can get that done, and I expect it to, and I am looking forward to that process playing out, because the other thing I wanted to say is that dragging this on isn't helping anybody. It's not a good look for the town. That's not the top of my priority list. The top of my priority list is that the public is confused, underinformed about following all of these minor details, just seeing signs and not reacting to that, and hearing all kinds of stuff second and third and fourth hand. So we have to resolve the issue sooner than later for just community cohesiveness.
Councilor Brown.
The evidence as to our direction seems clear, so I'm with, I think, everyone here in favor of the moratorium and being as thoughtful as we are as a community. It's just who we are, so.
Great. All right, so we will bring this back up in 2 weeks for more council discussion on the moratorium, whether we move forward with it. And thank you for your time.
And can I just offer a word of thanks for people for coming out? We don't get a lot of attendance at these meetings. It's just nice to see people get out and be involved in town issues. So come anytime.
And now that we're done, you don't have to leave. You can stick around.
All right. And with that, we are moving on to our next public hearing. This is about the Senior Property Tax Assistance Ordinance. Yes, take it away.
So I think we briefly touched on this when we were setting the public hearing, but Chapter 67, Property Tax Assistance Ordinance, was implemented or adopted first last year, so we've done 1 year of the Property Tax Assistance Program. We knew when we implemented it that we probably were going to want to tweak it as we went through. We did have a couple of tweaks last year, and we talked briefly at the Ordinance Committee meeting, and the Ordinance Committee understands that I might have some other suggestions, but wanted to bring a first revision to the council for its consideration. And this revision, it changes the application due date from November 1st to April 15th. And we're doing that for two reasons. One, to allow people to bring us up-to-date tax information. And two, when we were asking people to apply in the fall for something that we weren't going to pay out until May or June of the following year, we had some people that forgot why they got checks from the town, and so we want to clean it up and make it a little bit more streamlined. Because we're changing the due dates, in section 67.6, we would also be changing the council approval date from the first meeting in December to the first meeting in May. And then the timing of the payments, we had previously said two things, that we were going to do an electronic funds transfer, and then a paper check was like a special thing that had to get permission. Right now, our system, we discovered to do this, we do a batch payment, which we're not keeping people's information in perpetuity. We like that setup. And in order to do an ACH, we would have to have people's bank account numbers and put them into our system, which ultimately, while more efficient, creates a greater risk for us. So we're keeping the ACH in there because maybe sometime in the future it would be a good option. But for right now, we would rather have it say electronic funds or paper check as determined by the town manager, just whichever one works. And then we would be changing the timing of the payment from 21 days after council approves or the tax is paid, whichever comes later, to June 1st or 14 days from the date that the current assessment is paid in full. And part of the reason for that is when you have 100 people qualify for a program and they each are paying their tax on a different date, and they really want you to go in and double check it, it makes it a little bit onerous to manage, whereas if it's all on one date and you're just picking up stragglers, it makes it much easier. And again, less time for people to wait for that check from when they get notice that they've been approved.
I'll just add, it wasn't even 3 years ago that the town's network and computer systems were hacked, and we were down for a couple of days. And while we did not lose any individual information, it very easily could have been that ACH files, that to make it easy for payments to go out that way, could have been one of the items that were lost to hackers. So I'm firmly in agreement with that.
I do anticipate that we're at the staff level doing some more research on ways that we can tighten this up a little bit and marry with the circuit breaker program. So that will come back to the ordinance committee in the next couple of months to look at some further substantive tweaks to the program.
We don't typically have, I'm just thinking about the date of payment, when it says June 1st or 14 days from the date of the current tax, that the current tax assessment is paid in full. We don't typically have a lot of folks who pay post June 30, right?
So we have we send out about, I think we sent out almost 300 postcards saying you haven't paid yet, and we did that towards the end of June.
I'm just wondering, because we're obligating the funds in the current fiscal period, I'm wondering about accruing. It just might be a question to pose to Jessica if she thinks that that's going to pose any sort of problem.
So I chatted with Jessica about that. The number is so small, and we know what the amount is, that we can carry it as an account payable as soon as so we'll recognize the liability.
Yep, great.
Any other thoughts for Sophie? All right, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for this item. Anybody online?
We have lots of people online.
All right, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, so Councillor Brown, could you please read the be it ordained?
Be it ordained that amendments to Chapter 67, Senior Property Tax Assistance Ordinance, changing the application deadline and decision-making timeline, be adopted.
Second.
Any further discussion? Thank you. I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. This was our first year doing this last year. We knew there were going to be changes, and this is looking good. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item 112-25. This is to consider action relative to the purchase of cardiac monitors. I'll have the fire chief come up, but in the meantime, I do want to mention that this is coming up to us again. We're buying 3 at once. I believe this is a cost-saving measure from a strategic procurement standpoint. But Chief, please take it away.
Good evening, Bob Bernard, Fire Chief. Yes, we discussed this last month. Purchasing all 3 at the same time essentially will make it easier for us as far as the soft goods go. The parts and pieces that we use with the monitors, we're not stocking 2 different models or brands, if you will. One of the other issues I've been facing is this couldn't come soon enough is last summer when we had our unit service that we have now currently, the batteries, some of them are defective, and the gentleman that came in to service the units for us actually ordered batteries last summer when he honored our service contract last year. We still have not received those batteries as of yet. He physically handed me 2 of his own personal batteries that he uses to test equipment the other day just to kind of keep us limping along with the 3 units that we have now, trying to keep them in service. So it is very much needed.
That's great. Any questions for the chief? Councillor Pilch.
I'm answering one of my own questions by reading last month's minutes. I apologize, it wasn't at that meeting. Did we send out a bid for?
So this company is a sole proprietor. They actually provided a document which states that they are the only company that sells the product that any of the Stryker type products. If you go to the hospitals, you'll see the cots in the rooms are Stryker. The cots we use in the ambulance are Stryker brand. So the physio distributor essentially is single source.
So I would say, coming from a community that used Zoll, which would be kind of the other, in my experience, it's either LifePack or Zoll, Zoll. what we learned very quickly is you do one or the other. And especially in situations where you have mutual aid responders, it's kind of important that you are in the same, you're using the same, it's kind of like Macs and Apples. Which is why, while it might make financial sense to look at Zoll, it would kind of mess up the landscape.
The towns around us also use like that.
They're using like that.
The compatibility, Counselor, is also our AEDs that are in town, the AEDs that we carry. The police carry in their cruisers. I have one in my personal, or not my personal, my town vehicle. They're interchangeable. So if we start CPR, we go to LL Beans, and with their good hearts, they're performing, a CPR. Essentially, we can unplug essentially from their machine and plug into ours. That is not compatibility across the board by different manufacturers. And to answer your question, it did go through the SAVIC cooperative bid process as well, and we are receiving trade-ins on the old monitors, even though essentially they're really pretty much obsolete. We are getting, a little bit of money back for those as well.
And remind me when we'll receive them?
It's it'll be about 3 months for us to get them. So I will come see the town manager tomorrow morning if everything goes as planned and get the contract signed. And we will. And again, as I mentioned last meeting, it would, the City of New York Fire Department FDNY was ordering a lot of these. So I'm still kind of hoping we can get ahead of the curve.
Would that cause a huge delay, do you believe?
Excuse me?
If we got behind New York City?
Yeah, they're ordering 310 of these, and we're ordering 3. So, yeah, it's you kind of see the supply and demand there.
Yep.
New York won't even miss them. They could just send them our way.
How much did we budget for this? Do we remember?
So that budget is included in each ambulance that we have purchased. It's part of the ambulance.
Outfitting the ambulance.
Yeah, it's part of the ambulance budget. So 70,000-ish in each of the ambulance. Yep.
For everything, not just for these.
No, for these.
70,000.
No,
70,000 for these.
Yeah.
70
Or-
for these.
Okay.
Then we are saving a good chunk.
Six. I thought it was.
You're looking for the price of each unit? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Right, 60-ish, yeah. Okay.
What the amount budgeted for each of the unit?
Right, because you essentially have the total there.
Yeah.
Each unit, essentially, ordering them now this fall, they'll be about $61,308 and change. But
So
against the budget.
doing it separately, it was about 70,000. Was it
Yes.
about
Yeah.
70,000?
Exactly. Because we would have purchased 2 now with what the monies we have and the monies that are budgeted. And then with the new ambulance that was approved coming in basically a year from this month now, so September of 26, we would have purchased that 3rd one. And then my presentation a month or so ago was to allow us to purchase all 3 at the same time so that we have compatibility in all 3 of our current ambulances now.
Great. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Councillor Pilch, could you please read the be it ordained?
Be it ordained that the purchase of 3 cardiac monitors for the Fire Rescue Department in the amount of $183,926.80 be approved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right. All right, moving on to item 113-25. This is to set a public hearing for our 2025 comprehensive plan. Caroline, any background? We've talked about this a lot. We've heard a lot about this. Everyone should now have it memorized from front to back.
But they might not, so I have a couple slides.
Oh, it's thinking.
Rocher pizza tonight? Do Rocher, I missed the announcement that Rocher's wanting some best pizza in New England. Steve Fred something. Yes.
I need a mic.
Oh my goodness. You have the stick right in front of you?
You're spoiling me tonight. I didn't even notice.
Okay, Tom, you change the setup every time.
Thanks for doing that on TV. So tonight I'm here to talk about the 2025 Freeport Comprehensive Plan. And before I jump in, I just want to thank a couple of people. So obviously the community, because we've been overwhelmed with the response that we've gotten for public participation. Planning events aren't fun, typically viewed as fun, but we've had at the public workshops between 50 and 100 people. We had over 400 surveys, and we've talked to a lot of other people. So thanks to our community, also thanks to the planning board who's been talking about this every single month for about the past 18 months and having to read a lot of homework. Thanks to the council for being so engaged. The participation at the public workshops from the council was just amazing. We hadn't seen that in the past, and I think it's why you don't want to hear about this a lot from me tonight, because you have been so involved. Of course, all our staff's put in time, and then our team at North Star and their sub-consultants. But because you are familiar with it, I'll go ahead and dive right in. I have a great presentation. You can watch it later if you'd like. So for the people at home that might not be familiar, I just want to really quickly talk about what a comprehensive plan is. I'm not going to look at that. So a comprehensive plan is a really important document to the community. It shapes our vision for the future. They have a shelf life for about 10 to 12 years. It is regulated under the state if you want to have a comp plan. They have a series of criteria that a municipality should have in their comp plan. Why is this thing so important? It's not just the vision, but it's really going to be the roadmap for how we achieve that vision over the next 10 to 12 years. We're going to use this document in any land use decisions we make to make sure they're supported by the document. We should be using this as a reference for making decisions on municipal investments, and it will serve as a guiding document for our town staff, our volunteer boards and committees when they go to work on projects. There's two primary components to the comp plan. It sets the vision, and then there's forward-facing goals and implementation strategies. And then we do take a look back and we look at data and kind of analyze the trends, which we spent a lot of time on over the past 12 plus months. One of the questions we get is, but what about all those other plans? Because Freeport likes to plan, and we do have a lot of plans. I'll just mention two. We have more plans, but our two most recent plan, I'll put a little asterisk for the dog bone working plan, but our two big plans that we had a lot of in public engagement were the downtown vision that we completed in 2022 and the recently completed climate action plan. The comp plan looks at the community as a whole and really needs to take all voices and find a balanced opinion and view and input. So this plan does acknowledge the other planning work that has been done. If you look in all the inventory chapters, it did make clear connections with the climate action plan and the downtown vision plan specifically because they were so new, and you'll see references to other plans throughout. So how did we get here? So we started by engaging North Star Planning. They brought in Levine Planning Strategies, FB Environmental, who did all the maps, and Aceto Kimball Landscape Architecture, who did a bunch of the drawings. Like I said, the planning board's been talking about this at public meetings, notice for quite a while. They started in December 2023, talked about it. We then did a community survey that we had open for about 12 weeks, and we originally scheduled 4 public workshops, but based upon the level of community engagement and the feedback, we did have that 5th workshop, which we added in March of 2025. For public outreach, there's quite a bit of work that went into this. We did tables, we did posters, we actually did multiple direct mailers to households. We did the postcard, and we were fortunate enough to be able to piggyback on some of the other mailers, like Spring Cleanup Week. In the most recent mailer, we did advertise that it was coming to you in September. We did some flyers in schools. That was a little bit harder to get into the schools, but we were able to get into the elementary schools, and then we did a lot of work in the municipal bulletin. So what have we been doing since March? Because that's really the last time that we had a big public workshop. So the planning board has still been working on the comp plan. We had that big community meeting in March where we showed some of the draft content, the policies and the implementation strategies. The planning board took what they heard and got some additional feedback and continued to work on finalizing the draft of the plan to get it ready for public hearing in April and May. They did get some comments. We heard a lot at the workshop about the growth areas. They did have deliberate discussion about that and decided to keep the maps as presented as the meeting with a couple little tweaks. There were some mapping minor errors. And they did hear comments, but they felt for the most part that they really had a well-rounded plan that reflected the values of our entire community. So they really didn't make a lot of changes. So we got the draft. It was posted online, and while that was all happening, we sent a copy to the state because we knew that we were doing this under the current Growth Management Act, and an important part for us was to send it to find out whether or not it's consistent. Consistency is not a requirement, as we heard, but it's an option. I think it makes our comp plan stronger when we go to make future land use decisions to show that it is consistent with state law and sometimes with state grants, or for at least a while, John might be able to update us, but you could get points for affordable housing applications if your town had a consistent comp plan. So the state found it consistent. They always come back with some comments, mostly just wording tweaks. You forgot this species, or it's called this. So the planning board looked at the state comments, made some adjustments. They looked at public comment, and then they prepared the final draft, which was posted in July. They had a public hearing to August, and they recommended that the council adopt the current comp plan as drafted, which is what you have before you tonight. Happy to answer questions. You've all been very present and involved in the process, so I didn't want to go into a lot of detail, but happy to do it. The Future Freeport website is still active, so if you missed some of the things I talked about tonight and you're listening and you want to go back, you can go to the website. Some of the meetings and the draft plans are on there. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And I also want to echo your thanks to the community. It makes it much easier to rely on it as an actual roadmap for the community when there was great turnout. So that's great. Same with council, so thank you. I don't have any comments, so I'll turn it over to my co-councilors to see if there's any thoughts on their end. We're all experts now. Councilor Egan.
This is just more of a mechanical thing, but it's a very comprehensive plan. I'm wondering if there's a way to make some of the things that we keep hearing a lot about, for instance, housing, that shows up in a couple of different places in the comp plan. I'm wondering if there's a way for us to make those particular elements more accessible and pull out separate, and I'm old-fashioned, paper versions available in town hall for people to come and pick up and say, so 2 years from now, someone comes in and they have a brilliant idea about putting up an apartment house. They could say, look, this is what our comp plan says about housing, and that you could hand it to them, or maybe it's not on paper, but it could be available on our website or some other electronic format. I'm just trying to think of it, instead of trying to digest all 200 million pages of it, if we had elements that could be pulled out and, maybe even polished up with a little bit of communications work to try and have subject area elements that people could find more accessible, and they could read 20 pages instead of 300.
I think we could definitely look at ways to break it up. Now it's all one big document. There's multiple sections of it. We could break it down. As far as topic, I feel like there's so many special topics in there, but I think if there was a couple hot topics of, now, which will change, we could work with the planning team to do that easily. We could find topics that people are looking for through a
search.
Digital search, yeah. We do have paper copies here for people to look at. We can keep one at the library. We don't reproduce them because the cost, but if people needed it, we could do sections of black and white for sure.
Kyle, do you have some additional thoughts?
Yeah, so not specifically to that, but something through the planning department I've wanted to do since I got here was develop some kind of one-page fact sheets for different planning topics like housing or, accessory dwelling units or low impact development when we do that ordinance or things, and then create a resource page on the planning webpage where people can just kind of go to those specific topics that they might be interested in. And, you know, if it's something that's already adopted in ordinance, it could walk them through the process or the intent of why an ordinance was made. In this case, it could, yeah, just summarize the overall housing goals and recommendations from the comp plan. So I think it's something that I wanted to work on starting anyway, so I think that could definitely be one of the things we could add.
Any other questions for Caroline? Okay, great. So Councilor Lawrence, could you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. You put my eyes on.
This is big. We've been working on this for a long time.
I know.
I know.
I'm very honored to be reading this. It has been such a long time.
It's not yet.
We still have the public hearing. It's not done yet.
Right.
You pros at the liquor oh, no, wrong one. Sorry. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 16, 2025 in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, starting at 6 p.m. to allow the public to provide comments regarding adoption of the 2025 Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
Any other thoughts? We're very close to the finish line. Good work so far. All in favor?
Aye.
We haven't had the public hearing yet.
Thanks for walking down.
Can I just ask you if there's any other information you want staff to prepare for the public hearing, or if you have strong feelings about if you need a consultant?
So you had asked about if we wanted the consultant here. I don't feel like we need that. I do. Does anybody feel differently?
No, but if you could read the whole thing at the beginning of the meeting, that might be helpful.
Sure.
There you go.
256 pages.
You show up at 2 and we'll start.
In that reading clerk's voice of just
right.
going.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think our staff and our team are well prepared. I don't think we need the consultant here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, this is going to come up when we talk about district meetings. So in terms of like resources, how we can make that available at district meetings, we'll talk about that just in a little bit.
I'll be here.
And I guess I ask you the same question. Is there anything you need from us for that public hearing?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Just in the quorum.
We can hopefully do that. All right, moving on to item 114-25. So this is following up our conversation about the streamlining of our liquor license. We know we've had a couple businesses that we have supported getting liquor licenses outside of our existing process because they had gone through the state process. So staff has worked on a few proposed options. I'll let Chris review and we can have a discussion about which one we like best.
All right, so what I did first was I removed that public hearing requirement from the new liquor licenses. So your proposal before you tonight has liquor licenses still coming to the council, but as an action item when they're brand new. So that will shorten the time by at least 2 weeks, at least half. With the new liquor licenses, well, not only did we remove the public hearing requirement, but we added staff review at every step of the way. So it's not going to, we're not going to have a public hearing, but all the licenses are going to be reviewed by the manager, the clerk, police department, code enforcement, and fire rescue, which is not a policy that we've had in place in the past. What I did with renewals was I basically gave you two options. So option one is the staff recommended option. And it includes that instead of being put on the consent agenda for years 2 through 5, that will just stay in-house and it will go through staff review. At any point in this process, if the application is found to be unsatisfactory, it's going to come to the council, and at any time it's before the council for review, you can decide to set public hearing. So there's that, we can still continue to put it under more stringent review. So returning, option one would be to put renewals in the staff hands. Option 2, I left as it is now, where the renewals for years 2 through 5 come to the council on the consent agenda, and years 6 plus just would be approved by the clerk's office. That's what we have now. But in this scenario, we've added staff review. So it's actually under more stringent review than it has been in the past. I feel as though option 1 is really a good option. I mean, you're still going to be putting your eyes on every new liquor license, and we're going to be putting renewals under that staff review that it's never had. So I really feel like that's going to be a great process for us. I did address catering permits, and caterings, I feel as though we should just keep the process that we have now in place, which is it comes to me for review. It has to be a licensed caterer. They're just asking for permission to come into town for an event. So we are leaving that one the same. On extensions, liquor license extensions, we get those occasionally. It has to be a licensed establishment, so it's already been approved by the municipality. And with extensions, because we have had some issues in the past, I started sending them to the police department for review before I approved them. And so I just wrote that into the policy for extensions.
Great. So basically, the biggest change here is we're taking out the public hearing process.
Correct.
On
And
both
adding staff
processes
review
in staff
all along
review.
the way.
Out of curiosity, is there a benefit, or is it easier to take them off the consent agenda if we were to maybe pursue option 1, but still keep the consent agenda aspect of it?
So would it be, what's the question again?
So, like, is there a reason why we can't just keep adding on renewals to the consent agenda?
So, no, that would basically be
Right.
option 2, leaving it the way it is.
Somehow I missed that, sorry.
Okay. It yet again holds up sometimes because you've got to wait for a council meeting.
Right.
And when we get to August and November, there's only that one
Right.
meeting and nothing in November. So pulling it into staff review is actually going to produce the benefit of, speedier.
Right. That answers the question I was trying to ask, so thank you. Councilor Egan.
Chris, is the catering permit just because the caterer would be serving alcohol at the event? Is that the only reason why they're coming?
Yep, this is a liquor
So
license.
if it's
Yep.
catering without alcohol, they don't need to come in for a permit?
Nope.
Okay, that's good, because I hired a caterer recently and want to make sure I didn't violate the law.
No, we're just talking about alcohol here.
When's the party? No.
You missed it, Chip, sorry.
What does, can you talk, what does staff review look like? I'm just specifically wondering, you've got a few stakeholders, town manager, police department, codes enforcement, fire rescue. What if someone has a concern? Like, how do you delineate between cause for concern that would pull the application and bring it to us versus something that could be worked through?
I feel as though because we're looping Sophie into this staff review, that she'll be able to say, we need to stop here. This needs to go to the council. I feel like she's that line that will know.
So we had a similar process where I was before with permitting. And what kind of created on the staff review side, the difference between an action plan in progress, that there is a solution in sight, versus this is a problem. This is a significant problem that if it blows up on the front page of the paper, staff does not want to hold the liability for that. So it's really about making sure that you have the chance to vet that. A good example would be the difference between, for example, perhaps Nate would find administrative alcohol violations, Bureau of Alcohol violations that a business had. And the difference between was a violation, they paid the fine, and we still have concerns, which we could get out of the Bureau of Alcohol. Or here was the violation, they went and got a new ID reader to make sure that they were catching fraudulent things. I would see that as a resolution if they haven't had further complaint. So it's not that the call was made or that there was a problem that would really trip it for me. It would be if we thought that problem was ongoing. And I really think we tend to see places come through with pretty clean backgrounds or a problem. We don't see a lot in the in-between.
And if we were to see, if someone came in with a problem, it probably wouldn't get to the current process until you resolved it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a health or a public code violation that was a health issue or a safety issue, I think Nick would probably hold that until they corrected that issue before he gave it the sign off. So I think the intent with me being there is not that I'm going to get knee deep in a review, but rather that I will review the review and use the same barometer I try to use of this is above my pay grade and council needs to look at it.
Councilor Pilch?
I would prefer option 2. Reason being, in year 1, with the initial license, we don't know what's going to happen. All the paperwork checks out, but it may be that the new establishment is problematic. I don't think it's fair to burden staff with having to make subjective decisions. I think it's easy to say, as long as they're not health and safety violations, code violations, then you should grant the permit. If there are subjective issues, if neighbors are complaining, but it's questionable about if there's a specific law or ordinance you can point to, I feel like that's our job to say, hey, we're your counselors, you can come to us, you can complain and we'll listen. But the other thing is it sort of puts the proprietor on notice that, I know this is going to be on a council agenda. Yep. And usually they just sail through and it's rubber stamp and it's consent agenda, which doesn't take them any time for us. But I know that it at least has to pass by them, and there's the possibility that if the neighbors are unhappy, they'll talk to the counselor. So anyway, it's a final check. It does require waiting for at least one council meeting, but it's better than waiting for 2 council meetings, and it doesn't take up any extra time on our agenda once we're here. So that's my preference.
Wouldn't that come through anyway? I mean, if at year 2 they have some kind of an issue, and you hear it from someone who say, hey, can you bring this up to the council? I mean, isn't that?
It might, but I would have to reach out. I would have to know what's happening and reach out to Sophie and staff and say, when you see this come through, please add it to the council agenda, as opposed to having it be the other way where it's on the agenda and we have the opportunity
Sort
to
of that safety net catch-all moment. Yeah. Councilor Smith?
I think to follow up on what Councilor Pilch was saying in terms of the timing, I understand that we've had the concern, and one of the reasons we're doing this is to kind of keep things moving so we're not slowing business down because of council meeting timing. But I think for renewals, I guess my question is, if everybody knows when the renewal is due, then that's kind of on. Who reaches out in terms of the renewal? How does that process start under the new state process? Are they prompted to go through
By the state.
The portal? And I guess assuming that prompt is happening in a timely manner and it's getting then to you in a timely manner, it would seem like we would have enough time to get it on a council agenda, even if we only have one in that month. But I'm also just sensitive about this idea of if they're doing it at what they think is the last minute and they have time, but then we're going to end up in that same place that we've had with these most recent new applications where they thought, well, as long as I got it entered by this deadline, it was going to go through. But if it still has to go through another month of council agendas, I guess that's my concern.
I guess
I'm just asking what.
Yeah, and I think that my concern always falls like in November, when you literally have a whole month off where no business is conducted. And the liquor license renewals that come in during that period, under staff review, their option one is actually going to put more eyes other than mine and the council's. It's actually going to have codes and fire and police, which is so much more than we've ever done. When I bring a renewal to you now, we're not knowing. The only time that it's getting a liquor license is getting a codes and fire annual inspection is if they have a special amusement permit. So we have liquor license holders that haven't had codes or fire in their establishments. With this policy, with all of them, we're going to be putting more eyes on that business.
And the police chief would know if there were any complaints.
Yeah.
So if there was a majority of them, they'd be, hey, you know what, you gotta come and talk to the council.
I have a question. What do other towns do? What's sort of like the norm? What do our neighbors do? How do they do this?
I sort of polled around, and it's a plethora.
Yeah.
It's a plethora of cities that hold public hearings and towns that do not. Yeah, it's really all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing, though, is council likes the idea of staff review, that added piece seems like a good piece. I hear that this project or this moving to a written policy so everybody knows what we're supposed to do and eliminating the automatic public hearing is something that council is very supportive of. It seems to me that we might get to a place where council is like, you know what, we let year 6 through whatever just be the clerk, because that's what you have done historically.
Yes. Yep.
But I can hear the issue of, as a counselor, I was elected to be the voice of the people in a place where people can hear, and I want this to still be a transparent process. So perhaps what we have to do is put everybody on notice that in November, we don't have a council meeting. So if you're going to have your liquor license renewal hit then, you just need to understand it will be conducted on the first meeting in December. So I know Chris put a ton of work into this. I think she gave 2 really good options, but it really kind of sounds like a good intermediate step would be for council to at least continue to hear, to see them.
I would think that year 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be more problematic than year 1 and 2 if you had your first liquor license. You want to be good.
You'd be surprised.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I think because we have more eyes on it now than we've ever had, I'm for option 1 because then it gets kind of off our plate and only comes in if it is a problem. And because the chief sees it and sees all the complaints, and because the police chief sees it and the fire chief sees it, well, those are our 2 safety guys. There's a problem, I would expect that they flag it. If they flag it, well, we got a problem. So I get where you're coming from, but I think having everybody on it, that we don't have now, and we still do it.
Is there another way that, is it information sharing or other business where we can hear updates on liquor license renewals, so we still have that touch point where we know we're going to hear about it and have a discussion about it, but it doesn't hold up the final part of the process for a business?
Perhaps, like each month, the first meeting of the month, I could let you know the liquor licenses that will be coming up for renewal that month, or...
We get a weekly or biweekly printout from the manager. It could just be an addendum at the bottom of the manager's listing. Here are that you just feed to the manager. Here are the liquor license renewals that we're going through. And that way it's circulated and available, but we don't have to actually vote on it or take up time or hold up anybody.
Yeah, you'll know in advance when they're renewing. You'll know, we can say on August 1st, these are the ones that'll be renewing in September.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a surprise, yeah.
Right, that would get to Dan's point of making sure we can actually see them, just in case we happen to hear something, you know, in a ball game somewhere in the bleachers, you're like, oh, yeah, that's,
Right.
I mean, been doing this 9 years, I've never seen one where it's been a problem, so I don't think we have too much to worry about here, but I agree that, you know, we want to maintain the ability to stay in touch with that, but I firmly believe that Chris is addressing what we're talking about here with trying to get government out of the way of small business operating. So I like option one, as long as we can get a little bit of visibility on those renewals.
Yep, I agree, because I'm very sensitive to sort of the last minute nature and wanting to support businesses being able to open when they're ready and make money, but not quite to let go of all of it yet. Yeah.
So how do we address a minor change that allows for that sort of middle ground?
Do we have to codify the
I don't think that
manager
would
report?
change the policy per se,
Yeah.
but it will be our practice to communicate the upcoming licenses to you.
And if you want, we can just put a little italics under that saying the manager will update.
With regular manager updates?
Yeah.
Written updates?
Yeah, the policy is a little bit different than ordinance where you have to be very specific. Sometimes you can just tell us what you want and we can make it work.
So it sounds like, I mean, I can just make the motion. Be it ordered that the proposed liquor licensing policy, including option one with regular written manager updates, be adopted.
Second.
Photo finish. Any other thoughts or questions?
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much for being so thoughtful about that. All in favor? Such a doesn't want to hear the compliments, just wants the votes.
I don't know, we were warned tonight that Freeport's developing a nightlife, so you just never know what's coming down.
now.
Yeah, we all go to bed at 9 o'clock. That's it.
Have a nightlife. 3 meetings.
All right, moving on to item 115-25. This is the warrant for the municipal election on November 4th. Pretty straightforward. This is just us calling the election on the 4th.
Second.
Any questions or thoughts? All right, Councillor Pillsbury, could you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that the November 4th, 2025 municipal election warrant be approved and endorsed.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, we will have an election. You're welcome. All right, moving on to item 116-25. This is to amend the Freeport Code of Ordinances. Sophie, take it away.
Oh, so our wonderful town clerk has been shepherding, you're okay. Yep. Has been shepherding us through the ordinance codification process, which is a lovely process. And one of the things that we found out is that our variety of structures within each of the 70, almost 70 ordinances cannot be codified the way they are currently all over the place. So we are going to need to go in and create one standard structure that we would use like the property tax, where it's a chapter becomes the first number. So if it's chapter 67, section 101, however it's done. And then we would reserve numbers in between articles. And so it's taking the very same words, but putting them into structure numbers, which we had tried to start kind of doing one at a time. Talking with Bay Municipal Association, for something that is clearly about codification or grammar, like sometimes we run across really nice typos that we don't want in there. Neutral language like he's and she's turn to they, just the best practice kind of language, as long as it does not impact the meaning of the ordinance. And no, Chip, we cannot replace things like references to other codes, but things that are truly more about, here's the ordinance, now you need to put it into this structure. They are fine, or they are advising us that we can do that with a blanket council approval. What I would intend to do is to give the codes, as we restructure them, to the ordinance committee, just so that they can look at it and make sure that we haven't inadvertently done something wrong. But it would save us from having to have public hearings and doing all of that.
Any questions? Councillor Pilch?
The numbering and codification makes a ton of sense. The grammar and language could be problematic in extreme edge cases. There have been all kinds of debates about commas and
Yeah,
or and
I would.
to be on you.
Yeah, I would look at things more like he's and she's to go to theys.
Even that, I think, could be a political decision for some people.
Oh, okay.
For me,
Well,
I'm fine with it, but
yeah.
see how some people might want.
It's 100% up. It's 100% up to you. There are some typos where the wrong word is used, and I would want to fix that. And places where a little t is used when a little t means community and a capital T means the town government. And I do think if we mean for it to be the town government, it needs to be a capital T. Things like that. But the only thing that absolutely has to get done at this point is the renumbering.
Right.
The structure piece. And so I will do whatever degree you wish. But I do think it would be good to have the ordinance committee just, even if it's individually, go through them.
I'm assuming that what will go to the ordinance committee will be tracked changes with
Always
strikes
has to
and
be.
all of
Yep.
that. So I think if there's any question of, I don't think anything's slipping by. So I think whether it's a pronoun change or a capitalization, it'll all be highlighted that would first go to the ordinance committee and then come to us still with the track changes, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing that says that we can't do all the work. Give it to the ordinance committee and then bring the whole thing here for you guys to look at. I just, for me, Chris and I are going to do this slogging through one ordinance at a time. And I really didn't want us to have to go to public hearing that many times. Just saying.
Could you just add that you'll submit to the council a before and after track changes?
Absolutely.
Anything you change?
Yep, absolutely.
Every time, or?
Yeah, periodically.
Yeah.
Yep. So what I heard was like a friendly amendment to the motion that was made? Or we haven't even made the motion yet?
Haven't made the motion yet.
Very good. So you can just add that.
Yep.
Councillor Pilch, you want to take
Sure,
it away?
I can take a stab, yeah. Be it ordained that the town manager be authorized to amend the Freeport Code of Ordinances to create a consistent style of numbering and identification across all ordinances to allow for codification. Further, to authorize non-substantive grammar and language corrections consistent with best practices, and to periodically submit such changes to the council.
Second.
Perfect.
Any other discussion on that? I think that's a great addition. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So now we're moving on to our public comment period, part 2, for folks who are online.
Did we? Oh, yeah, we did the warrant. Yep. It's Pete and Jim.
All right. Hi, Pete and Jim.
Can I read the other business so I can read something?
Oh, no. Well, I did, because, yeah, sorry about that.
You can read the order to go into executive.
Yeah, I'll let you do that one.
Great.
So for other business, do you want to introduce other business number 1, Councillor Egan?
Number one on other business is a discussion of district meeting agenda from Councillor Smith.
We, as you may recall, tasked the Special Projects Committee with discussing what might be the base agenda for our district meetings, knowing that individual districts may have their own items that they want to add. A reminder, the district meetings are coming right up. We have two of them next week. District 2 and District 3 are next week, and then District 1 is 2 weeks later, and District 4 is very end of the month. But so I won't spend a ton of time on this, noting the hour, but I just want to share what we had discussed, which would be Special Projects is Councillor Brown, Councillor Pilch, and myself, that were essentially 4 categories. One is town planning, knowing that the comprehensive plan is ready to roll. As we've set that public hearing, it may be that by the time we get to some district meetings, that's already been adopted. But I think, again, sharing that it is essentially complete, wanting to have a QR code essentially so people could go to the whole document online, maybe have one copy that people could look at the meeting, but knowing where they could get it. And also just covering what the next steps in that will be, and that this is now the roadmap that the planning board will now use to review additional zoning changes as we go through to complete that. So wanting to share about that. Other planning items coming up include the design review ordinance replacement that's almost ready for planning board adoption, and then including the height limit amendments that we just did for Depot Street. So just to review those things. Traffic and parking, which was a significant issue at the last district meetings in a lot of districts. So certainly talking about the Village Corridor Initiative and how that is honing in on the downtown vision and the comprehensive plan specifically for the Route 1 corridor. The trial 3-way stop at Main and Bow, and then an update on the completion of the Exit 20 and Exit 22 bridges this year, which is imminent, we are promised. And then, of course, downtown parking discussions relative to some of the things we've been talking about tonight. A reminder about the November 4th elections and the seats that we just did the warrant for, so you all have the list of what those seats are, both for council, RSU 5, and other offices, and promoting the October 2nd Candidates Forum, which I'm very excited about. Joanna announced that tonight, but that is a partnership with both the Freeport Community Library and RSU 5 community programs, following up on their Civics 101 program early this year, and it's I think the first time we've had a candidates forum in quite a while, so I think that's a great bonus ahead of this year's elections. And then there was the suggestion of highlighting any fairly new town programs, specifically the senior tax assistance program, which we just amended tonight, and any information we might be able to share about our alternative response officer and the services that are available to residents perhaps through that program.
I think the Wood Bank and the Tool Library would be.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a list of these?
Yes.
You have to memorize it right now tonight.
Oh, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the things we had talked about earlier was taking these, kind of grouping them into topics and actually having kind of an agenda for people to see, so they know that they shouldn't be spending all 2 hours talking about speeding.
And also to just understand, this is what you can expect to hear about.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, the very first 2 items on the agenda are welcome and introductions of whoever the district counselor is hosting the meeting, plus any other counselors who happen to be at that meeting and the town staff, and then pointing out that we have an agenda, but asking if there's anything that people don't see there that they really want to talk about, and getting that on the agenda up front so you know that you want to get to that topic at some point, or knowing you may want to slot that in one of those categories. Dan also brought up, today that there may be, again, you may know as district counselor that there's another topic that your district specifically wants to talk about. Dan mentioned the skate park. That could come up at another district meeting, but it has seemed to be really focused on District 1, so that may be more of just a District 1 conversation. So Chris was copied on this initial list, but I'll make sure with the additions that we just talked about tonight, that goes to Chris and Sophie and Caroline, and we can talk about how we get that into a format for the agendas next week.
And I will say, again, that at-large counselors, myself included, should definitely try to attend at least one. So you can pick whichever one.
Want to talk about sewer?
Oh, yeah.
Don't think.
Of course. I don't think we have to. I think it's just naturally come up.
So I do have good news, and that is that talking with Tom earlier today, since the district counselors didn't change, we think we can use video from the promos that you shot last year for the promos for this year.
We need to come in and dub the dates over.
Well, we think we can do that using some of our other tricks.
Look,
Like maybe Pete's wonderful voice.
at this point, you're too late to book me to redo it. I'm not doing it, so you have to roll out the old one.
I'm sure you have enough recordings of our voices that AI could just fix that whole thing.
Well, Tom is on it, and if it's possible, he'll probably be able to
I'm
do
still
it.
waiting for the time that we're on the hook. These at-large counselors hasn't happened yet.
Thanks for mentioning those. Anything else anybody wants to add for kind of the district meetings at large? Great. I'll send this off.
Great.
Hey, Brett, don't go too far.
Because now we're moving on to our second part of our other business, which will be discussed by Brett, which is the design review ordinance conversation regarding height and massing.
Sure. Brett Richardson, Development Director for the town. And this item is really about setting ourselves up for success. You guys remember that recently we've approved a height increase on Depot Street to 55 feet. That was based on a work plan that was endorsed by the town council on June 3rd, endorsed by the planning board on June 4th, and then it worked through the process and was adopted on August 5th. Councilor Smith alluded to the design review ordinance, which is being overhauled right now, which is going to rectify this conflict between height and scale in this area that currently has not been fully fixed. And so what we have is the zoning ordinance allowing 55 feet in conflict with the design review ordinance. And we have, if you watched the PRB meeting last month, we've had a great project that's been proposed, and we have more interest on Depot Street. So this is really a timely update about how to put out that welcome mat for the housing that we want to see downtown. So the idea is that we would ask the council to direct the planning board to take up a design review fix that will bridge that gap until the design review ordinance is fully overhauled. So we're hoping that this can happen relatively quickly and tie in to move things forward. And we have Kyle here tonight who can talk about the process in terms of timing, but I think the idea would be largely to have the planning board take this up in October and then bring it back to the council in November so that it could be fully operational there and in pretty short order and in a responsive time frame to keep the interest on Depot Street strong and moving forward.
Right, and the reason why we're pushing this now versus later is exactly what you said. There's housing ready to go. We want to see it move forward. How can we make it happen?
And really, we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page so that the board isn't interpreting the language differently than the applicant, differently than the staff. We want to clarify that so that we have all the consensus that we've worked collectively together to build, that reflects itself in the PRB process, and everybody comes out feeling like they've had a clear understanding of how to interpret a project, and everybody's on the same page in doing so.
Absolutely.
So this is about scale. So if we push, like we just passed this ordinance that says 55 feet, wouldn't the scale change?
Well, it's a good question. The way it's currently written is it refers to compatibility with nearby buildings. And if you think about the buildings on Depot Street, there are buildings that are tall, and there's a single-family mallet home that's not.
Right.
And so that could be interpreted differently by board members who are really trying to do a good job and be thorough in their review. And so what we want to do is clean this up, to take that question off the table and make sure everybody's looking at the standards the same way.
Okay, I just think that if we pass the ordinance, it says, okay, we can have this. Now you look at the scale, well, now we have all this much room to play. It shouldn't be, well, this house is here, so you can't have this.
So based on what was kind of seen on the 22 Main process, that is what caused staff to kind of flag the massing, the scale, as a potential conflict. When you started the goal, when we sat through goal making, you wanted us to have a good process so that we could roll out a welcome mat for a good project. And what we're saying is, this might sail through. Based on what we think we know, we are concerned that this could be a hiccup. And when you look at where the design review discussions are going, it's heading in a direction that would solve this problem.
Counselor Egan, can you please read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that the town manager be authorized to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the Freeport Police Benevolent Association, Maine Association of Police, for the period August 3rd, 2025 through June 30, 2028.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. One final thought from Counselor Smith.
I just want to add that while the details of that are in executive session publicly, we want to say that we really appreciate our entire police force and how much they add to the safety and well-being of the Freeport community and all of our visitors. We've just wrapped up a very busy summer season, which is always one of the busiest for the police department. And so glad to have this contract settled, but also very glad that we have the police force that we do.
All right.
I'll make a motion and we adjourn.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.